Запрошуємо вас до зали і просимо займати свої місця.
The President of Ukraine is going to solemnly open this forum. This is all the part of our forum dedicated to foreign affairs. You can continue socializing in the interval and take pictures, of course, but at this point, you're supposed to resume your seats. We are going live, and very soon we will start.
Вітаємо вас на всеукраїнському форумі.
We are greeting you at the All-Ukrainian Forum Ukraine 30, International Politics. And today the forum is attended by President, ministers, MPs, our international partners. We're going to discuss two important aspects of international affairs. Number one is deepening of our association with the EU and our road paved to NATO. These are the topics of our discussion. 30 big fora dedicated to the 30th anniversary of our independence, dialogue with authorities, NGOs, international partners, and Ukrainian experts. Ukraine is openly discussing, looking for solutions, harvesting the best international experience. We can get answers to very important hot issues, discussing the pillars of our independence. Ukraine 30.
Вітаємо вас на
I
всеукраїнському
would like to greet you at the All-Ukrainian Forum Ukraine 30 International Affairs. President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky.
Доброго ранку.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Сьогоднішній
This present forum is dedicated to a very important topic, international affairs or international politics and the role of our state in the world. Some people would argue that international affairs are far away from our mundane everyday matters. I am decisively against this position. Modern world is globalized, and the majority of challenges and threats are, if not global, then at least global, regional, if not global, and they reach far beyond the national boundaries. International affairs, one of the key instruments for development and prosperity of Ukraine. And this is an important part of my personal everyday work as President of Ukraine. Diplomacy, not in theory, not in abstract, this is reality. Real actions in order to restore peace, restore sovereignty and our territorial integrity in this country, in the internationally recognized frontiers. And diplomacy is the national interest that rides supreme and serves as the best measure for foreign politics. It should be reflected in every step, in every initiative, in every meeting, and we have to pragmatically and consistently defend this as the highest priority in politics, economics, energy, science and technology, culture, and most importantly, information sphere. Diplomacy is our way towards the European Union, the alliance. This is introduction of high standards of democracy, rule of law, and human rights. This is protection and support of Ukrainians in any corner of our world. And we understand that the place and the weight of Ukraine in the world is determined, first of all, by the level of domestic development. This is stability of our democratic system. This is honest judicial system, strong market economy, and a very powerful modern army. But diplomacy also plays its role. Our diplomats are the ones who promote Ukraine as a strong and authoritative European state. Ukraine that should be not subject. This is my priority, but an important actor in international politics. The modern world of rapid changes and continuous changes. Among other things, in the architecture of the international security at the global and regional level, we can see the build-up of tension and number of conflicts growing. Some states are imposing approaches to many countries for the international affairs. So the result is erosion of the international order, legal order. Our principal mission is to counter that in the context of our own national interests. And our principal national interest is peace, not somewhere, but in our land. And this is my principle, this is my supreme mission as President of Ukraine, to fight aggressor, to provide for sovereignty, for restoration of territorial integrity. That's the highest priority in our work. The illegal annexation of the Crimea by the Russian Federation and the warfare in the Ukrainian Donbass is a challenge for everyone, for all the democratic world. Formation of a strong external front for our state is a task for every diplomat, starting with attaches and inclusive of ambassadors. This is a personal mission for the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, and my personal assignment as well. Every talk, every meeting with our international colleagues I use to strengthen support our country on behalf and on the part of international leaders. One of the top priorities is the occupation of the Autonomous Republic of the Crimea and the city of Sebastopol. Turning the Crimea into a military base at the Black Sea is devastating the architecture of security in this region. So the counteraction requires our active and consolidated effort with the international community included. So Ukraine initiated creation of the Crimean platform. This is the first summit that will take place on the 23rd of August this year. And the mission of this platform is to strengthen the international pressure on Russia for the occupation of the Ukrainian peninsula, Crimea, and protection of human rights for all the dwellers of the Crimea. Most importantly, I think we should counter new challenges to security in the Black Sea region with cooperation among the fleets of the Black Sea countries. We have to be proactive in such efforts. Again, we have to be actors of this process. Only strengthening of our positions in the Black Sea will make it possible for us to maintain peace, security, and freedom of navigation in the region. And we can see solidarity without any reservations, solidarity expressed by the world, solidarity with Ukraine for restoration of our territorial integrity and countering aggressive steps made by the Russian Federation. By all means, very strong signals were included in the G7 summit and the US-EU, and also decisions of the NATO summit on 2021 that confirmed that Ukraine is going to become a member of the alliance. And I always say that projects of the EU and NATO are not completed without Ukraine. And full membership for Ukraine in the EU and NATO is our strategic priority for foreign politics.
До речі, з
And according to the latest statistics, the latest research, over 60% of Ukraine support accession of Ukraine to the EU, and the overwhelming majority support NATO, our accession to NATO. For us, this is security, the priority, guarantee of our prosperity. Our state and the Ukrainian people, I think, have already done enough in order to get from our partners a clear confirmation of the actual time and the actual procedure for Ukraine to become a full member and the alliance, for that matter. Now we are also promoting the role of bilateral agreements. There are more than enough reasons for that. This is strengthening competition among the countries. These are trends for formation of the multipolar world, strengthening, as they say, of the state egotism. And we are laying a new groundwork for the initiatives of strategic partnership with the US. And we are actively in preparation for my visit to Washington. That is supposed to be essential. This is not political tourism. This is something of great essence, substance, and it should be effective. We promoted our relations with the UK to the level of strategic partnership. We are strengthening our partnership and friendship with Turkey. We are deepening our special cooperation with Canada. And we are going to develop our strategic, mutually beneficial relations with many countries: China, Germany, France, Poland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Romania, Georgia, Azerbaijan, Moldova, and many other states that we would like to have very special, very essential, very strategic relations with. And our very important partner, India, that we regard as one of the leaders of Asia, the Southeastern Asia as a region, should be in the focus of our attention of our diplomacy. And we are going to deepen our global partnership with Japan and also strategic partnership with Brazil. Unfortunately, we recognize this, our efforts have not been very productive in Africa yet. This is one of the points of development for the world, and Ukraine should be a proactive participant of this process. And again, I would like to emphasize to be an actor of this process. And if we want to be an internationally recognized state, we should be acting in every process. One of the priorities is strengthening of the economic focus for our foreign politics. I repeat, economic diplomacy should actively provide for development of economy in Ukraine. And now we have this growing presence of the Ukrainian products in the traditional EU markets, the new promising markets of Middle East, Asia, and I believe that Africa also in the nearest future. And I count on deepening of cooperation with all the regions of Ukraine, providing impotence for tapping on the industrial and scientific academic potential of Ukraine. This is high-tech, this is aeronautics, space, green energy, agricultural sector, and our industry. Separately, I'd like to mention that Ukraine is very much interested in engaging the international partners for implementation of joint projects in the areas of our highest priority, where we can see some change already, some difference. That is infrastructure, that is aircraft building, this is agribusiness, industry, and what is also very important, energy sector. We have to work on localization of production, manufacturing, involving the spearheading companies in high-tech. This is for our diplomacy, an important task for every single ambassador for Ukraine. That is to strengthen the economic component of our everyday work, routine work of all your establishments. And that should be the economic result, the economic effect of your work. Every visit to the high level should have a tangible, specific trade and investment and economic component for Ukraine. Add a new value to that. And another very important area for our operations, for the Ukrainian diplomatic corps, is the development of military and technical cooperation. This is the task of looking for the markets to sell the products of our defense industry and to provide the Ukrainian armed forces with the state-of-the-art equipment and weapons. And another key task, modern key tasks, is the energy security of Ukraine. At this point, the highest challenge, and you are all aware of that in this sphere, is completion and launching of the Nord Stream 2. It's commissioning. Completion and commission. This is not about economics. This is weaponized, and this is a weapon against Ukraine and against all the Europe in the future, I'm sure. This is a security trap for everyone, and we should continue our efforts opposing these projects in this very difficult fight of all the partners. This is not just for Ukraine. This is for all Europe, and we have to join the forces to counter this energy threat. And we have to use all the available mechanisms of the international organizations, that is United Nations, the Council of Europe, and the OSCE, and other partners of ours, and that we have consolidated for support of Ukraine. And here we should not forget about a very important agenda and wide support of our initiatives and the presence of Ukrainian personalities in all those international organizations. We have to make the story of success together in all the bilateral and multilateral tracks. We have to be the actors, we have to be proactive, we have to promote our interests as much as we can, do everything possible and even impossible for Ukraine to become a bigger presence in the world. And inside Ukraine, it should gain friends and attract partners, and partners should become allies. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to stress the special importance of the information warfare and information and digital space. Cyber threats, attacks against critical infrastructure, which are becoming a routine occurrence. And we have to share our experience with the partners in this sphere and joint efforts to overcome such challenges of modern world. A very significant issue for our digital reality is effective
різним.
resistance to hybrid and other disinformation attacks.
Останній рік ми
Over last year, we
почали створювати
started
систему виявлення
the system of detection and, most importantly,
на рівні держави.
countering
Наступний
disinformation
крок
at the state level. The next step is to design a system of strategic communication and coordination at the level of the state and also
На міжнародному
at
рівні
the international level with our allies. The
має
importance of this is also supported by the positive image
України.
of Ukraine abroad.
Це потужний
This is
інструмент.
a powerful instrument,
По-перше, як знайомитися
and
з Україною.
this is an introduction to Ukraine, first of all. And secondly, this is overcoming the stereotypes
які
that
базуються на
are based
пропаганді,
on propaganda, disinformation.
Україна має стати
Ukraine has to become
позитивним
a positive, a recognized
для
brand
туристів,
with
привабливим
awareness for all the tourists,
для подорожей,
all
для
the travel, studies,
освіти.
education, and business.
Шановні учасники форуму,
Dear participants of the forum, my
президента України,
position as President of Ukraine is very simple.
громадянин України
Every citizen of Ukraine
за межами нашої держави
staying
повинен
beyond the boundaries of our state should
захист.
feel and experience support and protection. Our joint ambitious goal is high prestige
Українського
of the
громадянства.
Ukrainian citizenship, Ukrainian nationality, Ukrainian passport in the world.
Престиж
Prestige
українського паспорту
of the Ukrainian passport is confidence
коли
in your state when, God forbid, you're in dire straits, in a tough situation, you're abroad.
державний апарат має
And the state apparatus should be quick, should be clockwork, should be
організм
well coordinated as one organism,
додому
regardless of us bringing back 250,000 people
світовий локдаун.
because of the lockdown situation, or we evacuate 100 people from Gaza sector, or one person from being a
Українського
prisoner of war.
можливість
The prestige of the Ukrainian passport is
по світу.
and also an opportunity to freely travel the world. In April 2019, the Ukrainian citizens had the opportunity to go to more than 140 countries of the world. Now it's 149 with the
Важливе завдання
simplified procedure crossing the border. It is very important for us to
нашими українцями, які мешкають
maintain our communications with Ukrainians living in different diasporas. The Ukrainian communities in the world
завжди і видно.
are always visible, active in their presence, and this is beautiful, this is great. And tomorrow, as I know, we will have the international Ukrainian community
Як представники
as a
держави,
topic. So the panelists from Ukraine and all the Ukrainians all the world will have a very fruitful discussion, I believe, with the specific recommendations made and the results designed. And closing
сам кінець
my speech, I would like to say that implementation of all the priorities for the
чіткої стратегії
foreign affairs require a clear-cut strategy based on our national interests. And I expect to have the opportunity to adopt such a
документ
substantial document, strategy of our international activities for the 30th anniversary, by the 30th anniversary of our regained independence. And another part and parcel of the
злагоджене
diplomatic service is a diplomatic system that is result-oriented and is not afraid of goal setting, ambitious goals. That is pragmatic, and remember that in this world The respect belongs, and this is true, to the strong, to the determined, to the consistent. And we have to develop our diplomatic presence abroad with inclusion of real priorities, with consideration of that, and expanding geography of our embassies in different parts of the world. We have to appoint new, dynamic, ambitious
які нічого не бояться.
ambassadors which are not afraid of anything.
Вакансії насамперед
The vacancies should be filled out in the priorities states
органічно
for Ukraine. Ukraine should be organically integrated into the international life and should be an active player.
спільними зусиллями
In joint effort, we should try
всім цим
to attain all this,
працювати із
to
розумінням
work
того,
with
що
understanding, appreciation of
сказав
a
президент
thing that was once stated by President Roosevelt.
реалізації наших
The only limit to our
наші
future is our doubt
сьогодні.
today.
Тож
So
давайте з твердою вірою
now, with great faith, I'm calling upon you to proceed and progress without any doubt.
немає іншого.
There is no other way.
Успіху.
And then we can hope for success
Дякую за увагу. Слава
for
Україні.
Ukraine. Thank you for your attention. Glory be to Ukraine.
Героям слава, дякуємо.
Glory to heroes. Thank you to the President of Ukraine for participation in the forum.
Триває всеукраїнський форум «Україна-30».
We continue our forum, Ukraine 30, and this week we are concentrating our attention at foreign policy. In the nearest 3 days, we'll be discussing many issues which are related to this topic, starting from the world Ukrainians. These are members of our diaspora who are all over the world, and they always help our country, especially when the times are difficult. The issues related to Crimea, we shouldn't forget about Crimea, and we also the issues related to the EU and NATO. That's what we'll be discussing today. Please welcome the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, Dmytro Kuleba.
Всім доброго дня.
Good afternoon to everyone. Greetings to you at the
Щойно президент
Forum Ukraine 30. The President of Ukraine has just completed his speech, and when people ask what's so special about his foreign policy, I believe that's the word ambition, and I'm sure you could feel it. The President sets high ambitions. Sometimes
законі президента
you believe it's impossible to achieve, but there's no word impossible in the glossary of the president. The recent fact, the Philip Orlek's constitution will be brought to Ukraine, and there were many doubts that this will happen for 300 years. People were saying that is impossible, but we will have this constitution here in Ukraine for the anniversary, 30th anniversary of independence of Ukraine. And I believe that only setting high goals we can achieve results.
нашої зовнішньої
Pride for Ukraine. That's one of the goals. When are we proud for our country? When we win, when our military, when our diplomats, our sportsmen, our performers, our researchers win, when the citizen knows that the state provides security at home and abroad, when we win in the cases related to the aggression of Russian Federation against Ukraine, when we see the international success of Ukrainian startups, when Ukrainian business knows that the state creates new opportunities for it in the world, when we help other countries to address their problems, when we are respected by other states of the region and the world. And we, Ukrainian diplomats, are dealing with all these issues every day. Let's talk about security. Security of Ukraine is above everything, is of paramount importance. It is the most difficult task to ensure security of the state. For more than 7 years, we are in the warfare, but today the security of Ukraine means that Ukrainian people want to live in a free Ukrainian state, and it also means that we have Ukrainian diplomacy and Ukrainian military forces. We are not members of the NATO, yet several important countries of the world, because of political reasons, do not sell us armaments which could strengthen our defense sector. That is the reality, but despite that, we have developed the military cooperation with the USA, the Great Britain, Turkey, and other countries. No one believed that this will be the case. There were many doubts, but we managed to get Ukraine join the program of expanded opportunities of NATO. Ukraine will become the member of the NATO. That's the matter of time and price that we will pay. But now, when we are not the member, we have to surround ourselves by alliances with other countries. We have created the quadriga of Ukraine and Turkey. We have the associated tria, three, Ukraine, Georgia, and Moldova. We have the Lublin Triangle. Here, in the Central Europe, we are among the neighbors, and there's no single nation of Ukrainians, Russians, and Belarusians. There is a myth, and it's more the myth about the Polish, about the Czech representative, and Russian Crimean platform is of importance now. The president of Ukraine has asked me the question, how will we return the Crimea? From his initiative, the ministry has developed the concept of the Crimean platform, and in a month and a half we will see its success. We know that Russia is blackmailing, is threatening other countries, and they demand that they do not participate in the platform. It is difficult for some countries under this pressure of Moscow, and with this background, its participation in the platform is a very simple test, whether they are with Russia and aggressor or they are with Ukraine and international law. If we look at these regional formats on the map, the strategy is very obvious. You can see the vertical from Baltic Sea to the Black Sea. That's the space of independence, prosperity, and strength of Ukraine. Strengthening alliances makes it even stronger. My favorite topic is how we are making our muscles stronger. Strong policy is impossible without strong economy, and it's easier to be proud of your country when your purse is full of money. We advise, we help to find partners abroad. We help to find the market where people want to buy our goods and services. Within this year, we opened and renewed the access for more than 50 commodity groups of Ukrainian products in the markets of 15 foreign markets. Also, now 147 Ukrainian companies started working in foreign markets. 109 Ukrainian companies received assistance of diplomats to participate in the tenders abroad, and we work so that these figures grow. For that, we need to strengthen efficient processes by very effective people. And today, we will make one more unprecedented step. We have made it already. Now, I publicly announced the competition for 20 positions of diplomats all over the world. That's from Senegal to Great Britain, from Latin America to Southeastern Asia. These are the positions for diplomats in the sector of trade and investments. Very often, people were saying that the foreign ministry is a closed club. We have announced 133 competitions for the positions in diplomatic service since September 2020. 82 winners joined our team. I can tell you, we are open for everyone who shares our values, professionalism, patriotism, and integrity. The president said that we have to protect our citizens abroad. The biggest value for Ukraine is a citizen of Ukraine. And that is what the Constitution says, and that is what the president reminds us about, and we are implementing these key words. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, together with other authorities, has proven within this year and a half that Ukraine doesn't leave those people who are in problems. We managed to get more than 1,600 citizens of Ukraine to return them back from different imprisonments abroad. More than 256,000 people managed to get back home, and that's the result that we are proud of. There are few countries in the world that have achieved such results, but the pandemic is continuing, and for foreign trips to be safe for Ukraine, we have created the interactive map for Ukrainians, and it has all the information about the specific rules and regimes of different countries of the world, of entry and exit. More than 25,000 people use this map every day. Ukraine has conducted a successful humanitarian operation. We have evacuated 109 citizens of Ukraine, 13 citizens of Moldova, and 4 citizens of Bulgaria from the sector of Gaza. And when we hear from foreigners, "Thank you, Ukraine," that's the best motivation, and that's when we become proud for our country. That was very difficult, but we managed to do that, and we have proven that we can help ourselves and our partners. We are developing a new program. The Council is helping, and that is when we will be helping our citizens abroad. And this will be a digital, very efficient coordination center under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We want to be proud of Ukraine that the whole world respects. What is respect? We want to have this respect because people are very much interested in our country. Ukrainian community plays an important role here. I talked to the president and I initiated in the ministry a new policy in the center of which there will be a new category, the global Ukrainian community. We will soon make a presentation of it. Foreign policy is not just a game of a team. It's, as Labanovsky said, it is the game of the team of stars, or star team. You see that we are making such a team. A lot has been done, but our ambitions are much higher. And we, Ukrainian diplomats, we know how to want to achieve more. We know how to achieve real results for our citizens. We're working on that every day, and we have no doubts that if we all work as one single team, we will succeed. Thank you for attention. Glory to Ukraine.
Thank you, Minister. Our next speaker, the All-Ukrainian Forum Ukraine 30. A special before turning the floor to that person, I'd like to mention this for people who are not fully aware of the scope of this big event. We are talking about 30 thematic events dedicated to the 30th anniversary of regained independence for Ukraine. And this week we are hosting foreign affairs, and the attendance is on a regular basis on the part of the leadership, MPs from the special committees, heads of ministries, and of course international partners of our state. And our speakers are not just reporting to the audience, but they have also opportunities to talk to the media. And you can follow us at Ukraine30.com. So, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Hellenic Republic, Nikos Dendias.
Honored guests, my dear colleague, first of all, I would like to congratulate you on the occasion of the 30th anniversary of Ukraine's independence. The 30th anniversary of Ukraine's independence is also, if you allow me to say, an emblematic year for my country, Greece. This year, we celebrate the 200th anniversary of the beginning of our war for independence. And what is important to mention here in Kiev, in the capital of Ukraine, is that we always remember that this war of independence of ours, this revolution of ours, started in Ukraine. We always remember that Odessa was the city where the Society of Friends, in Greece we call it the Filiki Eteria, was founded in 1814, a society with the sole purpose of founding an independent Greek state. This is why this Ukrainian city, but also Ukraine as a country, are so close to the hearts of us Greeks. And this is one of the many reasons that Greece is and will always be willing to assist Ukraine in its European aspirations. We believe that you belong to the European Union next to us. In this context, Ukraine is a priority partner for the European Union, both bilaterally but also in the framework of the Eastern Partnership. During the last few years, Ukraine, with the support of the European Union, has taken very essential steps in implementing very complex but also very ambitious reforms. And it was very interesting to listen to the speech of your president mentioning ambition as a main theme. The success of these reforms is pivotal for a better future of Ukraine, a future of a close cooperation with the European Union in the framework of a tailored relation. Reforms must be implemented, of course, in a sustainable manner on the basis of our common Euro-Atlantic values and our common Euro-Atlantic principles. We are proud that the association agreement, we Greeks are proud that the association agreement, including the deep and comprehensive free trade area, was signed in 2014 during the Hellenic presidency of the Council of the European Union. The implementation of these agreements is key in bringing prosperity and welfare to Ukraine and to the Ukrainian people. And in this challenging time, we will support your efforts for the full implementation of the association agreement. Greece has also consistently supported Ukraine's long-established partnership with NATO. We continue to encourage the country's efforts towards steadily deepening the ties with the North Atlantic Alliance. The recent NATO summit in Brussels reaffirmed the allies' commitment to stand by the decisions taken at the 2008 Bucharest summit. A sovereign, independent, stable Ukraine, firmly committed to democracy and the rule of law, is important to European and transatlantic security. The enhanced opportunity partner status granted last year provides further impetus to an already existing strong partnership. It will undoubtedly promote inter alia Ukraine's participation in NATO's exercises and training. With regard to the challenges that Ukraine is facing, the European Union has continuously and reportedly reaffirmed its support. The European Union supports Ukraine's independence, sovereignty and territorial integrity on the basis of the fundamental principles of international law. The European Union has taken a series of practical steps towards implementation of this principle-based approach. The approach is based on the condemnation of the illegal annexation of Crimea and Sevastopol and the restrictive measures imposed against the Russian Federation in response to the crisis in Ukraine. Greece has clearly expressed its principled position in all international fora that we participate. We uphold international legality. We always condemn its violators. We are clearly asking everybody for streamlining with the European Union foreign policy, and we have adopted this approach in the case of Ukraine. I have to say we have adopted the same approach in all cases. We have adopted the same approach in the case of Turkey's persistent, illegal and aggressive actions against Greece and against the Republic of Cyprus in the Eastern Mediterranean and in the broader region. For us, Greeks, the respect for international law, the respect of the international law of the sea remains the basic pillar of our principled foreign policy. It is, ladies and gentlemen, not an à la carte choice. It cannot be, it can never be. We steadily believe that a common set of rules shared by all is the only basis for peace and stability. A per case position is always, allow me to say, a very big trap. It may have some short-term minor advantages. It is a certain big-term loss. Thank you for your kind attention. Thank you so much.
Дякуємо, пане міністре.
Thank you, Minister.
За кілька хвилин тут на
In a
основній
few
сцені
minutes here,
Всеукраїнського форуму «Україна-30. Міжнародна політика» ми
we
розпочнемо
will start our first
із
big
нашими
session
учасниками.
with our participants and guests, and they will be discussing association agreement with the EU.
Білорусі, по суті, за деякими позиціями майже монопольне становище. Я вважаю, що цю ситуацію потрібно виправляти. Ми не можемо покладатися на Білорусь під керівництвом Олександра Лукашенка. Ми не можемо дозволити собі мати будь-який важіль впливу на Україну. Тому нам потрібно диверсифікувати ці постачання. Але також давайте не забувати про те, що продаж пального Україні – це важлива складова економіки Білорусі. І там теж люди отримують зарплати на заводах завдяки цій торгівлі. Тому Олександр Лукашенко і не стріляє зараз собі в ногу, намагаючись якось використати цей важіль. Але ризик є, ми маємо його враховувати. Я за те, щоб у нас було диверсифіковане постачання, щоб ми не залежали від Білорусі або будь-якої іншої країни.
Ксенія, будь ласка.
В липні президента Зеленського запросили до Берліну. Які можуть бути результати від зустрічі з Меркель? І як можуть змінитися відносини України та Німеччини після того, як Меркель піде з політики і піде зі свого посту?
Це буде довірлива розмова між президентом і канцлером. Вони будуть говорити про ключові речі, безумовно, про безпеку, про нормандський формат. Будуть говорити про Північний потік-2, будуть говорити про торгівлю між нашими країнами, німецькі інвестиції в Україну. Ми розуміємо, що канцлер іде. Зараз, коли я був в Берліні буквально пару тижнів тому, мені практично кожен співрозмовник казав: Дмитро, якщо ви хочете щось змінити в німецькій політиці, то ви маєте дочекатися нової коаліції і сподіватися, що вона складеться на вашу користь. Тому, безумовно, зараз точно не скажеш, якою буде політика Німеччини, але ми працюємо над тим, щоб з низки питань позиція Німеччини змінилася. І я зустрівся з представниками всіх політичних партій ключових, які претендують на перемогу на виборах або на достойний результат на виборах, для того, щоб закласти їм на рівень підсвідомості важливість, пріоритетність українського порядку денного і що саме ми очікуємо від Німеччини, але так само, що ми можемо дати Німеччині. Тому що дипломатія – це рух з двостороннім рухом. Це дорога з двостороннім рухом. І не можна лише весь час щось просити, потрібно щось давати, потрібно робити свій внесок.
Невеличке уточнення. Ви сказали, що працюєте над тим, щоб з низки питань змінилися думки Німеччини. А які це саме питання?
Це питання чіткої, прямої підтримки Німеччиною європейської перспективи України, членства України в ЄС. Це більш конструктивна позиція Німеччини щодо нашого членства в НАТО. Це питання продажу озброєння Україні. Я вважаю, що це вже питання принципу. Це питання навіть однієї снайперської гвинтівки, умовно кажучи. Але це постачання має відбутися. Ми маємо цю стіну зламати, тому що вона є суто політичною і, на нашу думку, безпідставною. Ну і, звісно, це питання подальшого функціонування Північного потоку-2.
Я уточню навздогін. Подальше функціонування Північного потоку-2. Як тут можна повпливати на ситуацію і на що розраховує Україна в цій розмові, так би мовити?
Ну, якось до цього впливали. Північний потік-2 вже давно мав бути завершений і введений в експлуатацію, але то одне станеться, то інше станеться, то санкції, то ще щось. І Північний потік-2, от ми зараз все ще обговорюємо, коли він буде запущений у дію. Ми зараз рухаємося за планом А. Про це сьогодні дуже чітко сказав президент, що ми проти виступаємо цього проєкту. І в дипломатії є таке правило: ні про що не домовлено, поки про все не домовлено. Так само і з Північним потоком-2. Ніщо не завершене, поки все не завершене. Це ключове, про що ми говоримо з партнерами, що насамперед Північний потік-2 створює виклики і загрози для безпеки а не для економіки. Економіка тут важлива, це великі гроші, 3 мільярди, які ми заробляємо на транзиті, але навіть якщо добудувати Північний потік-2 і зберегти транзит через Україну, це цілком можлива опція, то економічна частина, гроші ми все одно заробляємо, але безпекові втрати ніхто не може компенсувати. І ось це ключове питання. Як компенсувати безпекові втрати для України від запуску Північного потоку-2. Оскільки це дуже складно, ми кажемо, для всіх буде краще і спокійніше, якщо ви просто не запустите Північний потік-2. Але, звісно, це дуже складна гра. На кону десятки мільярдів грошей, вже інвестованих в цей проєкт. Мені дуже прикро, що вся ця дискусія про Північний потік-2 згорнулася до такого, до відносин між Німеччиною і Сполученими Штатами, Німеччиною і Україною. А при цьому Росія, головний бенефіціар цього проєкту, фактично на міжнародному порядку денному в цьому контексті не згадується. Вони просто чекають, поки все запрацює.
Вони просто перейменовують шампанське.
Коли, якщо вже ми про Північний потік, давайте уточнимо, все-таки чи готова Україна на якісь компенсації в разі, якщо цей Північний потік все-таки буде запущений, чи ми поки що лише план А, що він не запущений, все? Чи готова все-таки Україна отримати якісь компенсації в разі його запуску? Чи ми далі гнемо лінію, що він не запрацює?
Це, знаєте, як перед футбольним матчем вас би запитали, чи готові ви на післяматчеву серію пенальті? Да? Тобто,
це таки більш непередбачувана
безумовно,
гра,
ви хочете
ніж
перемогти в основний час, і це ваша мета, але як людина розумна, ви підготуєте своїх футболістів до післяматчевих пенальтів просто про запас, щоб було. Так і тут. Ми працюємо абсолютно за планом А і не сприймаємо і не ведемо офіційних перемовин щодо компенсацій. Але, маючи в голові можливість цієї післяматчевої серії пенальтів, ми сформулювали два принципи, з якими ми можемо розмовляти про компенсації, якщо до цього дійде розмова. І це принцип безпека, тобто як буде гарантуватися безпека держави. І друге – це, власне, забезпечення виконання домовленостей. Тому що можна з Росією домовитися, і може навіть Німеччина щось гарантувати в цих домовленостях, але як змусити Росію дотримуватися домовленостей, ось це велике питання, яке не має відповідей.
Дякую. У нас два питання ще. Артем, будь ласка.
Питання стосується поїздки президента до Вашингтону. Він писав у своєму твіттері, що ця зустріч з Байденом має статися саме цього місяця. Можливо, вже відомі дати і які теми будуть обговорюватись? Крим, Донбас, от таке цікаве.
Ще дати невідомі. Нам було запропоновано кінець липня, але ми не отримали ще конкретних днів, коли цей візит відбудеться. Втім, ми чекаємо на підтвердження дати вже незабаром. І американська адміністрація вже активно з нами працює над підготовкою цього візиту. Знову ж таки, в центрі уваги буде питання безпеки, тобто нормандський формат, Донбас, Крим. Це буде питання американських інвестицій в Україну і розвиток торгівлі між нами. Це буде питання реформ в Україні. Це буде такий основний порядок денний. Але окрім, власне, зустрічі з адміністрацією США, ще буде багато інших заходів. Будуть там контакти по лінії МВФ, будуть зустрічі з громадою, з американським бізнесом. Тому це не просто візит до президента Байдена, це візит в Америку в широкому сенсі.
А чи невеличко точно, чи будуть якось обговорювати залучення США до нормандського формату?
Це така одвічна тема. Поки ми всі обговорюємо залученість США до нормандського формату, Сполучені Штати просто роблять свою роботу, займаючи ту чи іншу позицію і сприяючи процесу врегулювання. Безумовно, ми будемо говорити про те, якою може бути оптимальна роль Сполучених Штатів у процесі припинення російської агресії і деокупації українських територій. Чи це буде роль шляхом прямої участі в нормандському форматі, чи якогось паралельного треку, чи якогось треку, який перетинатиметься з нормандським форматом, це предмет розмови. І тут поки що зарано робити якісь припущення.
І Борис, будь ласка.
Так, дякую. Про нормандський формат.
Український форум «Україна-30», міжнародна політика. І наша перша сесія І важлива тема для обговорення – угода про асоціацію із
Our first session is on association with the EU.
цієї
The main participants are on the stage, and that's the
політики України.
moderator is the executive director of the Council of Foreign Policy, Gennady Maksat.
Thank you, Dmitry. Your Excellencies, dear friends, dear viewers, I'm very happy to start this first panel with the issues of the association agreement. And we've listened to President, Minister, and His Excellency Ambassador of Greece. This is important not just for foreign affairs, but also domestically, for the well-being of Ukrainians. This is a very important topic. The association agreement is a very important document, as we know, that has a scope, big scope, 476 articles, 4 appendices, but this is the Bible of reform, so to speak, providing a driver, an engine for our process of reforms. President said that more than 60% of Ukrainians are prepared to support Ukraine's accession to the EU. According to Ukrainian Prism survey, we have that among the experts in international affairs, they all agree that the principal achievement since the revolution is the association agreement and the visa-free regime with the EU, the second position. And the organizers of this event presented also with implementation of the association agreement as an issue, and secondly, the renewal, the update of this agreement and the ambitions on this track that we might have. So let me introduce our speakers. We have a great panel today. Emina Japarova, First Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs. Marina Bardina, Deputy Head of the Parliamentary Committee on Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation. Remy Duflo, Deputy Head of EU Delegation in Ukraine. Dmytro Kiselevsky, Deputy Head of the Parliamentary Committee on Economic Development. Michał Gergon, Deputy Vice Ambassador to Ukraine. Timofey Milon, President, Kyiv School of Economics, advisor to the head of presidential office, and Nazar Bobitsky, head of the Brussels office of the Ukrainian Association of Business and Trade. This is quite a panel. You would agree, ladies and gentlemen, we can discuss matters in much detail, but we have just 1 hour. I would like to remind you of the timeline, so please observe the limits up to 7. It's best to have 5 minutes so that we can also have some questions. Let's start with Emina Japarova. We understand that the association agreement is about political and economic integration. They are interrelated, the two parts. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs are busy more with the issues of security that was mentioned by President and Minister, and the political dialogue. So we would like to share with us the achievements on the track of political association and security. Thank you, Gennady, and Your Excellency, dear participants, dear fellow panelists, guests, and viewers. President Volodymyr Zelensky and Dmytro Kuleba announces the unquestionable priority for Ukraine, European and Euro-Atlantic integration. I would like to say that for our diplomats, these are not empty words. This is our mission statement, and on behalf of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, I would like to focus on the political association because we demonstrate a very high level of efficiency on this track, because even the founding documents regulating political association, this political dialogue with the EU, this convergence of foreign politics, security and defense cooperation, and practically relationship along the track of important issues, starting with energy and inclusive of economics in general. We demonstrate a very good result. The political association, according to the estimates, this is 90% 90% of efficiency for the governmental system. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs is part of it. Now, when we discuss the foreign politics, consolidation with the EU and EU member countries in different issues concerning international politics, bilateral international affairs, and the level of statements that which weren't initiated added by the EU, it's 90%. And only in 2021, the number of statements made by the EU joined by Ukraine is more than 220. For example, with Serbia, it's 60% of convergence when the EU statements, different international venues are joined by this country. So we are consolidated with the EU in many issues with the bilateral track and the international agenda. Now discussing the security dimension, the defense dimension, perhaps one of the key issues for the agenda and question is cyber threats, information security, and that was also mentioned by President of Ukraine in his statement. For the first time in history of our dialogue, on the 3rd of June, we had consultations, cyber dialogue, Ukraine-EU. I would like to remind you that we were the first country of Eastern Partnership with this format and the 7th country in the world with a cyber dialogue with the EU. And that is China, Korea, the US, and we are in this very club of the countries, deepening dialogue for different tracks, different avenues. So we are going to provide operational conclusions for the Ukrainian party that will serve as a roadmap for our progress in cooperation with this sphere. Now to mention another track, not very easy at times. This is consolidation of the EU from the point of view support of territorial integrity and sovereignty. What the Ukrainian diplomatic corps achieved is, by all means, this is maintenance of sanctions. It's not a secret for you or anyone that at some points in Brussels we heard voices calling upon the communities to reconsider the sanction policy, and the Ukrainian diplomacy would insist that the 5 criteria, principal criteria declared as regards the Russian Federation, full implementation of Minsk agreements cannot be revisited while the Russian aggressive policy is still in place. We have to maintain, continue these sanctions, and Ukraine also initiated expansion of the sanctions with the sanction mechanism recently introduced for human rights, and in consultation with the EU we delivered package of the list of the people who are responsible for the war in Donbass and occupation of the Crimea. This crimes that should not stay impuned. And also, in closing, I'd like to say that in addition to the maintenance of our effective policies, there are some ambitious tasks. Minister Kuleba was talking about them. Recently, Minister Kuleba with his Georgian and Moldovan colleagues presented for the European institutions on the very day when they had the Council of EU. Having a meeting on the 24th of June, they presented the associated trio, and the 3 ministers of foreign affairs discussed the track of in-depth cooperation, deepened cooperation with the EU. The association agreement is just a landmark, but it's not a destination. We understand that implementing this agreement, demonstrating effective reforms, we can pave the way to the EU, which is irreversible with us. Thank you very much. Thank you, Eminem. And I would like to thank, using your presence, the Ministry of Affairs team of experts. When we, as experts, consider European integration as a cornerstone and cooperation of the EU on the document that you issued for sectoral strategies. Now, Timofey Milovanov, president of Kyiv Economic Advisor to head of the presidential office. We know that the association agreement is a political association and economic integration. So, with the priorities that President mentioned in his speech, with economic diplomacy expansion and the new markets, gaining the new markets, do you think that we have improved our position and opportunities by signing the agreement? Let me provide you with a certain statistic and then comment on the structural changes that we can see because of the revolution of dignity, the association agreement, development of our economy, but also the challenges that we have also through the pandemic, because of the pandemic. We know that till 2013, we had the biggest trade partner represented by the Russian Federation. Now it is the EU, and such processes of restructuring were experienced by Poland before us much earlier. It's a painful process, but it is good for Ukraine. The EU market is bigger. It requires added value services and commodities, and we can improve our market. Specific figures: exports to the EU increased by 24% since 2013 for the period 2013-2019. 2020 is not representative. It was the year of pandemic. We'll see what happens in this year in 2021. Well, services for the EU have increased by 6.5% versus 2013. The average growth of services, we had that crisis in 2014-2015, but the average growth of services was 13% in 2016 when we recovered, and 14% for commodities. And the importation did not recover. The gap between what we exported and what we imported used to import more, but the gap is smaller. We still import more, but this gap is much smaller now. What happened to the Russian Federation? With the EU, we grew at 15% annually. For the rest of the partners, all the partners by 5%, 4 to 5%. Without Russia, if we exclude Russia from the statistics, the rest of the partners we grew by 7%. Now, with the Russian Federation, we decreased at 78% over this period, and general export of Ukrainian commodities has not yet recovered. What happened? We increased considerably export to the EU, and we have considerably decreased our export to the Russian Federation, but by and large we have not yet compensated for the losses in our export to the Russian Federation with the export to the EU, but I'm sure that it will happen. Now the EU is the biggest trade partner, about 40%, and the share of Russia is down from 23 to 6%. And the Asian markets, especially China, while as of 2019 it's 33%, growing rapidly. So it's catching up with the EU share. So this is another big market, big priority. The principal changes in our export to the EU from steel products and minerals to agribusiness and ready food products. The biggest growth is observed with sunflower oil, meat, cattle and poultry, ready-made products, unexpected electric cables, heaters, and computer services, high-tech services and products. In other words, what's happening inside Ukraine? The association agreement provides for standardization of regulation in Ukraine. Just two examples. One example, this is electronic digital signature under the association agreement to start the standardization of our legislation. And that's how we provide inside the country the electronic services. About 25% of the people use them. We are not fully integrated with the EU, so our agreements that we sign here with our electronic digital signatures, they are not yet recognized in the EU, but we are on the right track. And the market of organic products, food products, because we adopted that law according to the association agreement and the standardization, we introduced standards inside Ukraine for organic products, and that's how we increase transparency, quality, and competitive ability inside the country. So our association agreement with the EU, in addition to all the other factors, gives us this opportunity to restructure our foreign trade with the Russian Federation reorients in favor of the EU on favorable conditions, and that has structural impact inside Ukraine because standardization of legislation, fewer barriers, more competition, better quality of the markets, new markets inside Ukraine. Thank you, Timothy. Thank you for your great presentation. We're going to discuss European integration. We can expect some discussion. Our next speaker is Marina Bartina, Deputy Head of the Committee of the Parliament on International Policy and International Cooperation, to Parliamentary Cooperation. Marina.
Talking about the level of execution, very often people say that Parliament has lower indicators than the government. This year, you're planning about 100 regulations, draft laws, which are to be submitted to the Parliament. And the experts say that we need to pass 178 draft laws. Is there political will in the Parliament? Because our European partners are also looking for this political will. Good afternoon, dear participants of the forum. That's what I wanted to start with, saying that the association agreement for the Parliament is, first of all, the legislation framework along which we need to move. We know what is the result to be achieved, and we understand that we need to to draft and pass the laws. In the Parliament, we have not just the mono majority, which is ready to support our activity, but we have also the parliamentary majority, and that's when different factions, even opposition factions, are ready to support and work on this legislation. Now we are at the stage of modernizing this agreement in different parts. Is a good indicator that shows that we are moving in the right direction. Drafting laws and work in the committees is very important. During the last year, we passed several legislative initiatives related to implementation of this agreement. These are on amendments. These were on amendments to transportation legislation, also the legislation related to the work of Ukrainian European customs. We also succeeded in passing the draft law on reform of the security service of Ukraine. Last week we made the decision on the High Qualification Commission for judges, and we also passed legislation on standards in children's catering, and this work is going on. I can tell you, talking about our activity in the International Committee, for the first time we set up the subcommittee on human rights and gender policy, because gender policy is part of the association agreement as well. And there are supplements on gender equality where it talks about rights of pregnant women and women after giving birth to children. Also, we introduced the norm on the so-called after pregnancy leaves for men. And also we are talking about increasing the quotas for Ukrainian products, and we are talking about the agreement on common aviation space. Today, Ukrainian authorities are working very efficiently when at the level of the president, at the level of the parliament, we are moving towards implementation of the agreement, so that we do not just initiate the draft laws, but so that we show the results. And I would like to say that Ukraine last year joined a large international program of support with the support of the First Lady, and it's also related to implementation of the association agreement. So basically, our plan of work for 2021, I mean the action plan of the Parliament, will be implemented, and I see that we have there's a support to start the so-called European Day in the Parliament when we vote for the laws related to association agreement. And I would like to say that we are striving towards this association, and we believe that the association with the EU and NATO is our strategic goal. Now, I would like to invite Remi Duflo, the Deputy Head of the Representative Office of the EU in Ukraine. Mr. Remi, there are many presentations and reports on the successes of Ukraine on the way towards the implementation of association agreement. When there was the Council of Association, the report was made in the European Parliament. There was some criticism as to some of the reforms, but in one of the norms says that every party makes its own assessment of implementation of the agreement, and these assessments are to be presented at the summit Ukraine-EU, which will happen in October. Could you share what has been achieved?
Thank you very much,
here?
Gennady. Not an easy question. Hello and good morning, everybody, including those who are watching us online. Well, I think in a nutshell, if you are talking about something like an association agreement, success is dependent on both the parties who are party to that agreement. And I think in our case, we can say the agreement, 5 years after its entry into force, can be seen in general as a success. So I think, I don't know exactly what the Ukrainian and what the EU assessments in their details are as of today. We have seen an Ukrainian report. It was presented last week. We know, of course, our EU report. It was presented on the 1st of December. It was annual. But I think we should now look towards rather the review process. Our agreement is very dynamic. It's a living document, and it foresees that after 5 years of being used, both sides should start reviewing it. How well do they attain the objectives? And they should exchange these assessments. And I think this is the kind of assessment we should be looking forward now. As it is, as I said, it seems to us in the EU delegation, success in general with objectives which are still sufficiently pertinent, ambitious. I know ambition is today's keyword, ambitious and comprehensive to drive our EU-Ukraine relations forward over the coming years. Of course, because it is a living document, as I said, it has the capacity of staying up to date and fit for purpose despite the rapidly changing context and reality around. Of course, as of today, we still have a large number of untapped opportunities. I think Timothy mentioned the margin for progress there is in the trade area. And there are, of course, outstanding commitments to be met still, which will remain the focus of EU attention and support where needed in the coming years. In a nutshell, where do we stand? As I said, there are many reports, I mentioned them, about the past. I'm not talking about the review process, which is ongoing. I would like to go rapidly through the main objectives of the association agreement to see where we stand more or less. The first is about values and links between the EU and Ukraine. I think overall here we have good progress. Let me just mention, for instance, Ukraine's ratification of the Istanbul Convention on Domestic Violence. It's an important point in terms of protecting human rights. We would like to see more, of course, in terms of impunity when it comes to the protection of journalists, or when it comes to the International Criminal Court, to the ratification of the Rome Statute. But this is for the period forward, obviously. And as I said, we think that there has been good progress on human rights, electoral legislation, decentralization, which I think is really a success, and public administration reform. This has been reflected in increasingly deeper and deeper links. The EU, for instance, has facilitated and sometimes financed partly Ukraine's participation in a wide range of EU programs. Horizon, where it comes to research and development, Euratom program, Erasmus+, who many of you know, Creative Europe, you name it. But also it has facilitated the huge support by the European Union to Ukraine during the COVID period. I remember that last year we were quick to react to the situation by redirecting 190 million euros to help Ukraine in the difficult COVID circumstances, in this difficult situation where the health institution and health worker, particularly frontline workers, needed support, but also companies, small and medium companies who were poorly equipped to face the consequences of the pandemic, or even vulnerable people who were taken, I would say, by surprise by a very difficult economic situation to which they were not prepared. Now, in terms of political dialogue, which is the second objective of our association agreement, I must say that there has been a very steep increase in our, not only in the frequency, but also in the depth of our political dialogue. In particular, not only through the existing committees and association council and summit structures, but also we have seen a rapidly developing set of side dialogues, which are very important. We call them sectoral or focused dialogues. I want to give a few examples. For example, we have a specific dialogue on public administration reform and public financial management, another one on transport, a high-level dialogue on industrial cooperation, agriculture. We have an informal work group on strategic communication and disinformation. We have, which is quite unique for a non-EU member state, a dialogue on cyber security in particular. We have a dialogue on the Green Deal and how Ukraine can use the fantastic opportunities opened by the European Green Deal to help its economy recover from the pandemic. And I wish to refer to the words of Minister Kuleba, who insisted on the importance of having a strong economy to pursue a strong and effective foreign policy. We have also now a strategic partnership coming on raw materials, including batteries, and a memorandum of understanding will be signed to that effect in a couple of weeks. So as you see, this is a lot of new ideas, initiatives which are developing around, I would say, the skeleton of the association agreement. And this gives us all, both sides, positive experience, better integration. And to that point, I want to praise the work of the Government Office for European and Euro-Atlantic Integration and Vice Prime Minister Stefanišina for all the work they are putting into these new developments but also more basically into horizontal coordination that gives a constant impetus to our dialogue. This is crucial because EU integration is not a separate or sectoral activity. It concerns the whole of government and the whole of Ukrainian society. Looking forward, I was talking about dialogue. We also have dialogue in the parliamentary dimension, for instance, or in the civil society dimension. Last Friday, for instance, we had a very interesting discussion organized by the Civil Society Platform, which is one of the discussion forums organized by the association, under the association agreement. In terms of foreign policy, I just want to add a few words to what First Deputy Minister Jepar said about the EU's commitment to the independence, sovereignty, and territorial integrity of Ukraine. It is a real commitment. We recently renewed our sanctions against Russia until January next year. We have offered, of course, at the same time, a lot of humanitarian support to the affected areas affected by the conflict. And of course, we will attend en masse the Crimean platform, the summit of which was mentioned by President Zelensky in his speech. As regards the more specific Eastern Partnership dimension of our foreign policy, I just want to say that we found Ukraine a very active, constructive partner. And in the trio formed with Moldova and Georgia, that was also mentioned, we see a lot of impetus given to the Eastern Partnership's regional dimension, and we find it is good for the initiative itself. Now, I will not speak a lot about the economy. I think Timofey has done it very well already. Just to mention that thanks to the free trade part of our DCFTA, Deep and Comprehensive Free Trade Agreement, we mainly, thanks to the reduction in tariffs in particular, our bilateral trade increased by 51% since 2016. Now some challenges may remain in terms of deep and comprehensive part of the DCFTA, which is about regulatory approximation. But in general, things are progressing well on that front as well. And I want to give a few examples of what it can deliver. Then we have started recently the technical process towards, just 1 minute, towards technically assessing the possibility of concluding an agreement on conformity assessment that, together with the progress made on customs, would considerably ease access to the European markets for Ukrainian products. Let me conclude just by saying that overall, I would have two messages. One is a message of encouragement to both sides, to Ukraine and the European Union, to continue the good work, to fully use the dynamic nature of the association agreement, timely updating the annexes, for instance, also engaging into deep dialogue about the reviews which are ongoing. I want, of course, to confirm that we will continue our support to the implementation of the accession agreement within the framework of the coming multilateral financial framework of the EU until 2027. And my second point is about the importance of strengthening the institutional framework and the capacities for implementing the association agreement, not only in terms of technical capacity, for instance, capacity to conduct impact assessments, but also in terms of making it sure that regulators, for instance, which are set up under the obligations taken in the association agreement, are truly strong and independent. It's particularly important to go beyond what can be achieved if we want only to implement the association agreement. For instance, if we want Ukraine to join the electricity network in Europe, the regulator of the electricity market would have to be truly strong, independent, and effective. I will finish on this encouraging point, and thank you very much for your invitation.
Дякую, пане Дюфло. Дійсно, ця підтримка дуже важлива.
Thank you. Indeed, this support is very important, and we share your concern. As regards institutional capacity, we can discuss this topic at length, but we hope that there are some developments of this sphere. And Mr. Duflo started discussing Eastern Partnership, and I couldn't stop him, because it was my great pleasure to listen to that discussion. Now, Dmytro Kisklevsky, Deputy Head of Parliamentary Committee for Economic Development, you heard the President saying that our principal national interest in the international arena is economic. You always insist that we have to maintain this dialogue for renewal of the association agreement. It is update and upgrade. And there are certain matters concerning the draft you support bills which raise much public discussion. Dmytro Kisielewski, Deputy Head of the Economic Committee of the Parliament of Ukraine. The European integration is a matter of principle, and this is our choice in joining the European civilization, especially in trade and commerce and economics. We have to abandon the naive appreciation that we can sometimes observe on the premises of the Parliament. And we have to focus on the economic part of the agreement. The economic and the commercial part of European integration is unfair for Ukraine because the economic part of the association agreement is not very favorable for Ukraine and requires revisiting and improvement. At the committee, we are having special hearing on a review of the economic part of the association agreement. According to the statistics, after losing the Russian market, we retain the EU market as the biggest for us trade partner, but we have not compensated for that. Mr. Manovan has measured the increase of the share of the EU is bigger because we have fewer countries in the customs union. We have the chronic deficiency even without the reverse supplies of natural gas. We import highly technological commodities and we export mostly raw materials. There's no free trade between the EU and Ukraine. Ukrainian companies have no free access to the EU markets. The quotas, customs fees and limitations are still effective, and some new arrive. We have miserable quotas for the agribusiness and food processing products, subsidizing by the EU in meat and dairy products, killing the Ukrainian producing our internal market. Strict protection means working against Ukraine. Recently, the safeguard for metal was renewed, punishing the steel mills in Ukraine, the technological barriers, the European Green Courses, protectionism of the EU for their producers as regards Armenia competition, and the shipment and transportation, artificial discrimination of the Ukrainian motorway shippers, and artificial limitations for the European export into the European Union, lack of access to the procurements in the EU. State procurement in Ukraine, de facto, has not received that. And Ukraine, unfortunately, and makes no sense, is my opportunity, open this public procurement for imported products. The importation we have at 40% in our public procurements, and the US and the EU, it's 5 to 8%. Respectively, and the ambassador of the EU says that we should forget about the draft on localization that raises in the parliament real concern, and the ITC technique, the underused potential is about $10 billion. This is half of our export to the EU, but this is growth based on our raw material structure. There's the Harvard and MIT technique identifying the highly technological materials, engineering, electric machines, equipment, steel making, the polymetric materials. In the EU imported at 120 billion euros, and now over the period of last 5 years they increased it by 85% almost. Ukraine is providing for such needs in the EU at 0.2%. So we have the potential to increase our trade, mutually beneficial trade. How can we tap on this potential? First of all, we have to realize, dear colleagues, that Ukraine is not going to protect our interests instead of us. We have to stand for our economic interests ourselves. There are 3 areas that I can see. First is to review the economic part of the association agreement to improve access of the Ukrainian communities to the EU market after 5 years. We have the right to this, and we have to say openly that there is a difference between partnership and being a raw material appendix. There's a big difference between the way in which the EU participated in the restoration of the Polish economy and how this is done to Ukraine nowadays. And we have the war since the signing of the agreement in 2014. A lot has changed. Secondly, we have to offer to the EU less dependence on import from the third countries with supplies compensating for that. Supplies coming from the EU. This is a win-win for the EU and Ukraine. Thirdly, we have to create powerful governmental institutions for industrial development. The EU countries all have them, all the developed countries for that matter. We have to develop our trade, our economics, this localization, industrial parks, export and credit agency, developmental bank, commercial representative offices, and economic diplomacy. Thank you very much, Metro.
Thank you for your interesting presentation. I would like to give the floor to Michal Gergen, the Deputy Ambassador of the Republic of Poland in Ukraine. Michal is known in Poland as one of the people who supports our initiatives. In May, the Declaration on European Perspective was signed between Ukraine and Poland, which recognizes our desire to submit the application. Poland was the second state that signed such declaration. In what else does Poland support Ukraine, and where we have some prospects for common cooperation?
Thank you, Gennady. Before I answer, I just wanted to go through the memory lane. In my previous life, in 2013, I was an humble intern at the EU delegation. And I remember the gloomy atmosphere when we all heard that the association agreement won't be signed. Fast forward 7 years later, we're here to discuss the progress, discuss the challenges, discuss what together we can do to facilitate the process. This is the measure of success. This is the measure how long was the road of Ukraine to the point where it is here right now. Concerning your question, Gennady, yes, that's true. The position of Warsaw was, is, and will be very clear that Ukraine has its place in the family of European nations. The declaration of President Duda and President Zelensky was very clear in text. So we commend the Ukrainian authorities for the political will, for the progress they have made in the reform process. We are very clear stating that the association agreement is not the final step in approximation and integration of Ukraine with Europe. And thirdly, that our stance won't change. We understand that there are experts, there are people that are trying to say that the reforms are too slow, the reforms may be more efficient. But when we're trying to present our best practices to our partners, colleagues at the MFA, at the Presidential Office, at the Cabinet of Ministers, we always try to state that with our experience, you cannot change the face of the country in 4, 5, or 6 years. It's a process. It's an ongoing process. Concerning the association agreement, we also understand, and maybe Remy will correct me here if I'm wrong, but this is the most ambitious association agreement that the EU has signed with a third country. It's a very complicated technical document. I actually tried to refresh my memory yesterday, and when I double-checked, it's more than 1,000 pages, so I just skipped this part. But concerning economy, I do believe that association agreement for Polish-Ukrainian bilateral trade relations was good. The dynamic of our trade is rising. what the previous speaker said about the road permits. Mr. Deputy, whenever you have the chance, please visit us at the embassy. We are more than ready and more than willing to once again tell what is the rationale behind the mechanism of road permits. And we're more than ready to welcome you at our premises. What I can say about road permits, because that's the topic that is oftenly presented during the bilateral meetings, in a couple of weeks, we're gonna have the next meeting of truck associations, where we're gonna assess the situation on the border. And I also wanted to underline that there is a permanent dialogue between the Ministry of Infrastructure of Poland and Ministry of Infrastructure of Ukraine. And if I remember correctly, last year it was 160,000 and additional 5,000 more. We also understand that last year was difficult for everyone. Not only Ukraine is facing Russian aggression, but also the pandemic, roughly speaking, didn't facilitate the reform process. But I think that now that the vaccination process is coming forward, now that we know the situation, I think that it will get better. Finally, once again about the declaration, it's not only the president that stated this very strong signal. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Chancellor, the President, understand how important the success for Ukraine is for us. It's not only about what we call the strategic partnership between Poland and Ukraine. It is in our vital interest to see Ukraine stable, with blooming civil society, and with a proper, well-regulated free market economy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michal, for your presentation, for mentioning this chronicle issue with permits, but we need to address that diplomatically. I would like to move to our next speaker, Nazar Babitsky, head of the Brussels office of Ukrainian Association of Business and Trade. Nazar, I would like to hear the opinion of the business. We've heard the 2 points of view which are quite opposite, and what do you think about the green course?
Thank you very much, Gennady. I'm Nazar Babitsky. Let me introduce myself again. I'm head of the European Office of Ukrainian Business and Trade Association, representing the interests of the Ukrainian exporters to the EU and other prospective markets. I have this privilege as the last speaker between you and the break, and I have this excellent opportunity to summarize, to introduce our collective stance on behalf of the exporters, the challenges for 5 to 10 years, and the Ukrainian trade. You should understand that export revenue is equivalent to 40% of GDP. So we have to discuss this special care for export. This is a high-quality contribution to the Ukrainian economic development. So let me shortly discuss what's next for our exporters and the challenges of today. What should the government pay attention to? The president should look into. The first mega challenge is in the situation that unfortunately the international trade and the national supply chains for commodities become at the same time an instrument and victim of geopolitical fights. This is not the first time when we detected. We were one of the first countries to detect that back in 2014 when the Russian Federation discontinued our access to the market, the stable economic relations as a component. They weaponized the aggression, this as a component of the aggression. And also we can see how the sustainable ties cut and how we're disconnected. The new players come into play. At the same time, this is a challenge and this is an opportunity. Now let me give you another example, a very brief one. Very few people know about that. It's very significant. 2019, the Korea and Japan had another disagreement over the legacy of war, and the Ministry of Economy and Trade of Japan licensed the semiconductors supply, and 40% of the production Samsung and other of semiconductors was jeopardized. Now we can see how supply chains become weaponized as an instrument of pressure and also a victim. And another thing is pandemic, the long-term effects of the pandemic. Using the EU example, you can see that very well. And now the issue is whether your reliable supply is the more economically effective player or geographically closer logistically, be politically more reliable. And the third challenge that we can see, the biggest one perhaps, that is looming is the climatic crisis, and not just its direct implications, but the pressure on the place like in the EU. We can say the carbon protectionism, we have mentioned that very shortly. We can see the food security or food safety and green taxonomy, the green rules of the games for the international investors in finance. The European Union are now leading all the three areas and challenges for that matter. So for us as exporters, it's very important to follow the three flags or indicators. First, the regulatory barriers that are used as a policy instrument and instrument of pressure for some players or actors, and also expectations and apprehensions of our importers, consumers of the Ukrainian export in the EU countries. It's very important for us to where we can help them in the new niches we can occupy now. And thirdly, last but not least, the investment climate in Ukrainian exporters have no luxurious lending opportunities enjoyed by their foreign partners and EU partners among them. So we count on the regulatory support. Customs should be without any predicament, assurance, and in exploitation. We have to become part of the web of the international trade with the producer and exporter at the center of this web. And these are the principal signals. And if we discuss the association agreement, the three areas and what's next there are all everywhere. The association agreement, the dialogue with the Green Cause, with the EU implementation of the current challenges and the agreements pertaining to them. We would like to call upon you. Please pay attention to that. Thank you, Nazar. And we have a couple of minutes. I suggest the following. Let's try outline one priority in turn that requires our special attention for implementation of the agreement. The priority and explanation why. So, Eminem. Me? Well, the key priority for us in effective implementation of political dialogue, relations and security and defense, and cyber dialogue is an element of this track, and convergence of foreign politics. We are an effective implementer of this political association. We have I earmarked that, and there is no predicament in there. Thank you.
Я не буду до кінця відверто, якщо зараз
Well, I will support the Convention of the Council of Europe on counteracting the violence against women and domestic violence. For Ukraine, it should become a priority. Last week, we passed the legislation in the second reading, and that's related to domestic violence. But this whole infrastructure is to be created via ratification of convention. And as MP, I believe that ratification of convention, support by MPs of this convention, will be an indicator of how Ukrainian MPs are ready to fight for human rights, are ready to counter domestic violence. In the parliament, we have set up the interfactional association, and I hope that this important document will be
Well,
ratified.
I will be very brief
Remy?
this time. I think I would like just to insist on the importance of implementation. Enforcement is key. It's true, of course, for the judicial reform. It's true for any thing which has been done within the framework of the accession agreement. So let's focus on that as well, beyond legislative improvements. Thank you.
Thank you. Пане Дмитро?
I believe that we have to get concentrated on improving the access of Ukrainian goods to the market of European Union and participation of Ukraine in replacing the import to EU from third countries by the goods made in Ukraine. Thank you, Michal.
As one of the top trade partners, that most important and what Remy said, enforce the judicial and anti-corruption reform, which will equal very easily to the better business climate, which will equal to more trade, more turnover between our countries. Thank you.
Дякую. Пан Тимофію?
For me, the most important would be what I call digital visa-free regime, where now digital standards and services are combined with European, will be exporting more digital services. Just give us a chance to help ourselves, give us regulatory support, and then we need to look for new markets. And third, reforms, legality, and easiness of business, of conducting business in Ukraine. Besides having a very good discussion, we have now 7 priorities on how to implement the association agreement. I would like to thank all for very good discussion, for your good speeches, for good recommendations, and we hope that our track towards European integration will be stable and permanent, and will have the support of our Western partners. Thank you. Thank you, all the participants, and we invite you to talk to the representatives of mass media. Soon we'll have the next session dedicated to the course towards NATO. In a few minutes, we'll discuss it.
Відносини із більш як 170 країнами. Офіційний Київ створив ефективну мережу дипломатичних представництв. На тепер у світі налічується понад 200 закордонних дипломатичних установ України. Крім того, наша держава – член більше ніж 80 міжнародних організацій, має акредитованих представників у провідних міжнародних організаціях, зокрема ООН та її спецустановах – ОБСЄ, Раді Європи, ЮНЕСКО. Україна лежить у центрі Європи. За площею вона перша у Європі і 39-та у світі. Наша держава має виходи до Чорного й Азовського морів і через протоки до Світового океану. Україна безпосередньо межує із 7 країнами. Через неї проходить більшість наземних шляхів із Центральної до Східної Європи і Азії. Відстань до столиці ЄС Брюсселя близько 2000 кілометрів. Усе це обумовлює величезний експортний і транзитний потенціал України, робить її потужною базою для підприємств, що орієнтуються на ринки ЄС, Азії, Африки. Це Всеукраїнський форум «Україна-30» і це наша експозона поруч із основною залою, де відбуваються усі наші дискусії, наші події. Зовсім скоро ви побачите прес-конференцію учасників наших дискусій, досить такі високоповажні люди. А щодо нашої експозони, ми завжди намагаємося ілюструвати те, про що говоримо протягом того чи іншого тижня. Оцей тиждень – міжнародна політика. Поруч зі мною такий імпровізований, власне, глобус. І схематично також по всьому холу, де відбувається наш форум, і тут навколо ви бачите прапори. І не тільки прапори України, але іноземних держав та організацій, в яких Україна бере участь або має право голосу, або прямує до цих організацій. Зокрема, от перед цим говорили про ЄС, і Україна має таке асоційоване членство і намір далі згодом увійти до Європейського Союзу. Така сама співпраця тісна із НАТО. І якщо ми говоримо про дипломатів, це не тільки наші українські представники, дипломати, які стають послами, консулами і, відповідно, секретарями посольств, працівниками посольств, дипломатичних установ в різних країнах світу, але і навзаєм, відповідно, представники іноземних держав, які працюють із дипломатичною місією своєї держави в нашій країні. Але це лише частина дипломатичної роботи тих людей, які задіяні у міжнародних відносинах, коли ми говоримо про нашу країну. Є ще офіційні представники багатьох міжнародних організацій, і не тільки самої Організації Об'єднаних Націй, наприклад, але і багато дочірніх, галузевих, ну, наприклад, ЮНЕСКО, так, те, що займається спадщиною, культурою, мистецтвом, освітою, науки. І так по багатьох галузях і під структурах, організаціях в рамках Організації Об'єднаних Націй є наші представники у штаб-квартирах по всьому світу, у цих організацій ООН, тому що основна в Нью-Йорку, але так по всьому світу розкидана. Так само і тут є офіційні представники цих організацій, які мають дипломатичний статус. Загалом це досить велика робота, і якщо ми говоримо про форум «Україна-30», це 30-річчя незалежності України. Досить молода держава і дипломатична служба самостійної країни стрімко розвивалася із перших років незалежності України і далі продовжує розширюватися. Це дуже важливо і для зручності наших громадян, це і візові питання, це і торгові представництва, а значить просування українських товарів і послуг за межами нашої країни, і тісна взаємна співпраця в різних сферах. І є військове співробітництво, безпекове, на рівні спеціальних служб. Усе це здійснюють дипломатичні наші працівники. І, можна сказати, досить це задовільно і прекрасно для молодої незалежної країни за ці 30 років розбудувати ось таку досить широку мережу представництва. Дехто із вас може заперечити, що все ж таки Україна, так само як і Білоруська Радянська Соціалістична Республіка, ще у складі Радянського Союзу мали свої міністерства закордонних справ і мали таку співпрацю, і мали свої місця в ООН. Але все ж таки єдине представництво, все ж таки дипломатичне, від Радянського Союзу це були представники в Москві. Не було таких посольств, які саме представляють Україну. Тому це досить складне питання. І якщо повернутися в історію, то якраз у 92-93 роках вирішувалося питання майна. І уже Москва, Російська Федерація у домовленості із Єльциним, Кравчук якраз вирішив, що Радянський Союз успадковує боргові питання і разом із тим все ж таки, як певна компенсація, забирає усе майно закордонних представництв. Тому усі посольства, досить хороші такі приміщення, майно дипломатичних установ Радянського Союзу, воно пішло саме до Росії уже після 92-го року. А Україна мусила усе це розбудовувати з нуля, будуючи приміщення, знаходячи собі приміщення, набираючи штат людей, обладнання. Певний час навіть ділили приміщення разом із росіянами. Ну а тепер зі зрозумілих причин уже протягом багатьох років намагається Україна розбудовувати, звісно, самостійну таку політику. Ну і згадаємо ті країни, які найпершими ось таким обміном послами, консулами підтримали нашу незалежність. А це дуже важливий крок. По перших порах, ще з самого початку, як то кажуть, на світанку відновлення незалежності у 1991 році, якраз уже за цей час кінця 91-го, початку 92-го, перші були Канада і Польща. І згодом Балтійські країни, які долучалися до такого обміну, і це було дуже важливим кроком для визнання уже незалежної країни і певний знак поваги, підтримки для молодої незалежної держави, яка тільки ставала на ноги. І потім уже розбудова тієї нашої великої роботи, яка стосується безпосередньо багатьох міжнародних організацій. Ось я, наприклад, був у Нью-Йорку в нашому офіційному представництві, воно має статус посольства України в ООН. І є наш посол, який представляє, це уповноважений представник. І я знаю, тому що ми найближчі дні будемо говорити про діаспору, то саме навіть приміщення, там є і дошка, і ці імена, самі діаспоряни, наші українці, які виїжджали ще з першої, другої, третьої хвиль, вони, маючи кошти багатовпливових наших співвітчизників, українців за кордоном, вони допомагали фінансово для того, щоб облаштувати усю цю роботу. І таких прикладів дуже багато для наших дипломатичних представництв. Ну, за цей час, якщо взяти посольство, то у нас вже є і в Сан-Франциско консульство, не тільки в самому Вашингтоні, тобто сама робота так і в багатьох країнах розбудовується. І є куди рости, є куди змінюватися. Ну, наприклад, у нас невирішені питання, які стосуються Ірландії. Є тільки консульський відділ, і знову ж таки документи довго відправляються для України, для українців це досить складна ситуація. І здавалося б, ну, далеко не остання країна і не така вже прям і далека. Все ж таки це все Європа, і дуже багато у нас може бути торгового співробітництва, подорожей громадян, що, звісно, би сприяло тому, що наші співвітчизники перебувають там. Ну і плюс декотрі є країни, де, на жаль, ще й досі діє з ініціативи саме цих іноземних країн така ситуація, що в Україні, наприклад, немає свого посольства або консульства, і документи переправляються на посольство цієї країни в Москві, в Росії. І таких пару країн у нас ще досі залишаються. Це питання безпеки, тому що це наші документи, це наші громадяни, а з певних питань навіть потрібно було їхати. Але зараз за ці останні 6-7 років з початку війни дуже багато таких країн уже переглянули свою співпрацю, і або українці ще, якщо немає посольства, там в Польщі можуть бути, в Хельсинкі, багато інших прикладів певних міст і країн, де йде така співпраця. Ну, сподіваюся, що буде намічено із нагоди цього 30-річчя незалежності теж певні рубежі, що ми пройшли, що варто далі куди рухатися і розбудовувати нашу діяльність. Ну і другий напрямок – це сама активність наших посольств і фінансування дипломатичних установ за кордоном. Поки загалом можна помітити, що все ж таки наші дипломатичні представництва поруч із сусідніми країнами все ж таки не так активно можуть працювати, і це залежить саме від фінансування, не від там лінощів чи аморфності самих працівників, а через те, що для цього потрібні великі кошти, аби організовувати події, Дні України в певній державі, запрошувати підприємців, промотувати українські товари і послуги, Україну загалом, і туристичний потенціал, і науковий потенціал, освітній і так далі, і так далі. Для цього потрібно, звісно, звертати увагу, бо найчастіше це не є витратою коштів, це інвестиції, які із певним часом повертаються в залежності від сфери, в якій на яку спрямована ця додаткова діяльність наших дипломатичних представництв. Ось це, власне, і символізує, можна ще от, власне, цей коридор показати, поки наші гості ще кавують і спілкуються, от прапори іноземних держав, із якими є співпраця України. А ми вже зовсім скоро повертаємося і до прес-зали, і згодом повернемося до основної зали форуму «Україна-30» і вже поговоримо про шлях України до НАТО. Україна стане членом НАТО із планом дій щодо членства в Альянсі як невіддільною частиною цього процесу. Це підтвердили лідери держав-членів Організації Північно-Атлантичного договору в завершальному комюніке за підсумками саміту НАТО 14 червня в Брюсселі. Євроатлантичний курс України – пріоритетний напрям, закріплений в Конституції. Рік тому Україна отримала статус партнера із розширеними можливостями. На переконання президента України Володимира Зеленського, а вступ до НАТО – це єдиний шлях до закінчення війни на Донбасі. Україна у центрі карти, у центрі поглядів з усіх сторін. Сама Україна дивиться у бік Європи і Атлантики, в бік Євросоюзу і НАТО, наводить мости і веде діалог із цілим світом. На заході і півночі, на півдні і далекому сході. Українські дипломати – архітектори діалогу, який розширює коло можливостей для своїх громадян, бізнесу і тримає зв'язок із тими, хто давно не живе в Україні, народився далеко, але серцем тут. Україна-30. Міжнародна політика.
Шановні пані та панове, за кілька хвилин ми розпочнемо форум. Запрошуємо вас до зали і просимо займати свої місця.
Це форум Україна-30. Міжнародна політика. Далі поговоримо про
Ukraine 30 international politics. Let's discuss our road to NATO, the prospects, the steps that should be made by our state and our government. And moderator of next session is editor-in-chief of the European Truth, Европейская правда, Сергій Сидоренко. Good afternoon, everyone watching us. Let's discuss NATO and our road to alliance. Sometimes we have positive competition. We compete with ourselves in this race for NATO and EU, but Ukraine, without any doubt, is going to be a full member of both. Even with the change of administration, we keep the course, and I think this is our destination without any doubt. Let's discuss our road to NATO with the panelists present in this audience. Now, US ship, and that includes Brussels, Tbilisi, and one of the ambassadors I'm going to introduce now is watching us from Kiev. Most likely Igor Zhovko, deputy head of the presidential office, responsible for European integration, among other things. A manager para office deputy to Minister of Foreign Affairs. Also the same area of responsibility. Online we have Georgy Tolkachov, acting head of mission of Ukraine at NATO. In the nearest future, I hope we will have an ambassador. We are expecting this appointment, and also Georgia. From Georgia online, we have also Anatoly Petrenko, deputy minister of Defense, Marina Barden, deputy head of the committee on foreign affairs, and they are responsible, among other things, for European integration. Online we have Kama Kusk, ambassador of Estonia to Ukraine, and Karina Leia, deputy head of mission of the Latvian Republic in Ukraine. Let's start with Igor Zhovko. I would like to say that he'll have to excuse himself a bit earlier. Some other business to attend to he has. And I'm not just discussing this as a journalist, but also we have a representative of the expert community. Have you heard the initiative promoted by the group of think tanks that Ukraine should think about some new format of cooperation with North Atlantic Alliance? We called it compatibility plan with NATO, and that means that Ukraine will take the responsibility to undertake reforms that we have not yet accomplished, and the alliance should actually facilitate this for Ukraine. What do you expect from NATO? Let's discuss that.
Thank you, Sergei, for your question. I will immediately answer it. Yes, myself and other representatives, we know about that, and my first reaction is all the initiatives of the representatives of civil society, of journalists, of independent experts are welcome. We are always for creative approach, especially in such important and serious issues as Euro-Atlantic integration, and all the approaches leading to the final objective, which is NATO accession and accession to EU. But I would like to react to what was happening in the last several weeks. It's 3 weeks after the NATO summit in Brussels.
Я б хотів відповісти чи сконцентруватися на 3 основних питаннях. Пам'ятаючи
Вашингтонський договір, який, власне, створив Організацію Північно-Атлантичного договору, ми можемо сказати про те, що є таке положення в цьому договорі, якому сказано, що будь-яка країна, європейська країна, яка має бажання стати членом НАТО і вносить внесок у систему євроатлантичної безпеки, може таким членом НАТО стати. От давайте відповімо собі на запитання, чи вносить Україна вже на даному етапі, у 2021 році, 5 липня, внесок у євроатлантичну систему безпеки? Перша і одразу формальна відповідь – так, тому що про це сказано навіть у рішенні Північно-Атлантичного альянсу 14 червня саміту, про який ми так всі багато говоримо. Там чітко сказано і висловлено вдячність Україні за внесок вже на сьогоднішній день, підкреслюю, і в NATO Response Force, тобто в НАТО сили швидкого реагування НАТО, і шляхом участі в операціях НАТО, і шляхом участі в спільних миротворчих навчаннях за участю держав-членів НАТО. Тобто перша відповідь так зафіксована з країнами-членами НАТО навіть формально. Україна робить і буде робити ще більший внесок у забезпечення євроатлантичної безпеки. Одним з компонентів цього, до речі, також зафіксованому у рішенні НАТО, є згадка про українсько-польсько-литовську бригаду. Знаємо, що ця бригада функціонує досить довгий час. 3 країни вносять туди свій відповідний внесок шляхом участі Збройних сил цих країн, шляхом ще більшої взаємосумісності між 2 членами НАТО, Україною і Литвою, і Польщею і Литвою, і поки що не членом НАТО Україною. Так от в рішенні Альянсу написано, знову ж таки, позитивно відзначено роботу українсько-польсько-литовської бригади і сказано про те, що це ще один приклад ще більшого зростання взаємосумісності між Збройними силами України і Збройними силами держав-членів Альянсу. Але найголовнішим внеском, який на сьогоднішній момент робить Україна до забезпечення системи євроатлантичної безпеки, це, безумовно, стримування російської агресії на сході нашої держави. І це теж, що оцінено державами-членами НАТО. Тому, безумовно, і ми перейдемо зараз до питання реформування, ми продовжуємо і реформувати і Збройні сили України, і сектор безпеки. І, безумовно, Україна має в повній мірі використати статус партнера з розширеними можливостями, але ще раз чітко важливо для себе самих зафіксувати і, скажімо так, це відчувати і пишатися цим, що Україна, не будучи членом НАТО, вносить свій внесок у забезпечення безпеки усіх держав-членів Альянсу. Друге, очевидно, ми вже багато коментували, ви чули коментарі президента щодо рішення саміту НАТО, який відбувся 14 червня. Безумовно, ми привітали те, що там було ухвалено. Це фактично, дійсно, як багато хто відзначив, це повторення рішень Бухарестського саміту, то теж важливо відзначити, що це не так і просто, скажімо так, повторення, тому що в попередні роки, попередні саміті ні в 14-му, ні в 16-му роках взагалі не йшлося про рішення Бухарестського саміту. У 18-му році йшлося, але, скажімо так, поверхово, побіжно. Тут чітко ще раз зафіксовано рішення Бухарестського саміту і те, що Україна стане членом НАТО, і те, що Україна отримає ПДЧ. Чи задоволені повністю в Україні таким рішенням? Очевидно, ні, тому що бракує тих часових рамок, коли, власне, це рішення почне реалізовуватися. За 13 років, що минули з часів ухвалення цього рішення на Бухарестському саміті, ситуація з безпекою, ну так м'яко кажучи, змінилася. І, зокрема, щодо України, і щодо нашого регіону, і щодо Грузії, про яку ви згадували сьогодні. Тому Україна просто просить дуже простої речі. Давайте починати визначати, починати обдумувати, як це рішення Бухарестського саміту, повторене під час Брюссельського саміту 2021 року, почати виконувати. Ми маємо на це повне право. Знову ж таки, ми робимо те, що від нас вимагається. Ми вносимо відповідний внесок у безпеку Альянсу вже сьогодні. Ще одна цифра, про яку чомусь теж мало хто говорить, я думаю, пан заступник міністра оборони підтвердить, оборонний бюджет України у відсотках до загальної цифри бюджету в нинішньому році визначений, якщо я не помиляюся, в обсягом 5,93%, тобто майже 6%. Згадайте ту неформальну вимогу, яка існує в Альянсі, 2%. І то ми прекрасно знаємо, що не всі держави-члени НАТО навіть витрачають 2% на забезпечення своєї оборони, а значить на внесок в загальну безпеку Євроатлантичного альянсу. Ще раз, Україна це вже робить сьогодні, не будучи членом Альянсу. І тут питання якраз до вашого запитання щодо реформ і щодо того, що з ними робити. Тобто, знову ж таки, ми чуємо про те, що Україна має виконати ще необхідні реформи. Такі реформи ми виконуємо, зокрема, в секторі євроатлантичної інтеграції, а саме це Збройні сили, оборона, інші реформи, вже починаючи з 2009 року, маючи те, що ми з вами прекрасно все знаємо, річні національні програми, які фактично повторюють ті річні національні програми, що мали країни-кандидати, коли отримували статус ПДЧ. Тобто ми маємо РНП, ми маємо реформи без політичної надбудови ПДЧ. На жаль. Тому вже в цьому році, якщо не помиляюся, 13-й РНП, який ми виконуємо. Наше запитання звучить наступним чином. То скільки ще РНП ми маємо виконати? Ще 13, може 23, може 58, для того, щоб сказати, що реформи повною мірою виконані. І тому те запитання, яке сьогодні ставить Україна перед членами Альянсу, давайте, і тут, наскільки я розумію, це якраз перекликається з ініціативи, про яку ви говорите, давайте нарешті сядемо разом і розробимо підхід, який дозволить визначити той end of reforms, ту кінцеву точку, за якою буде те, на що Україна має повне право розраховувати. Я говорю про членство, тому що, знову ж таки, багато спекуляцій навколо ПДЧ. Згадаємо тільки, до 99-го року такого інструменту не було взагалі. Він з'явився в 99-му році, він зараз існує. Що буде через декілька років, ніхто не знає. Динамічно змінюється структура безпеки і, зокрема, діяльність Альянсу. Ми знаємо, що Альянс
Пане Ігор, я змушений попросити завершувати.
Тому це відповідь на ваше запитання. Будь-які підходи креативні з боку, скажімо так, і наших партнерів в НАТО вітаються, тому що ми чітко бачили тих партнерів, які підтримували Україну на саміті НАТО. Ми знаємо, яким чином певні лідери підтримували нас в своїх виступах і говорили про конкретні часові рамки. На жаль, змушені констатувати, консенсусу в НАТО зараз не склалося щодо подальших кроків України. Це те, над чим працюватимуть усі. Від президента України, який, ви знаєте, найближчим часом здійснить відповідні візити до країн-членів НАТО, я маю на увазі і Німеччину, і Штати, і будемо говорити зі світовими лідерами іншими з цього приводу. Це завдання Офісу президента, Міністерства закордонних справ, наших послів в держав-членах НАТО, які, до речі, зробили вагому роботу для того, щоб рішення стало тим, яким воно стало. Тому, безумовно, треба йти, треба рухатись, але чітко треба мати зелене світло в кінці цього тунелю.
Дякую дуже. Я перепрошую, буду трошечки далі підганяти. Дякую, пане Ігорю, що зміг висловитися. Я так розумію, до кінця дискусії не вийде до сидіти. Але, власне, ми зараз спробуємо подискутувати по цих ідеях, які подані. Мені було дуже приємно почути, що є загалом підтримка нашої ініціативи, що, власне, є подібні з боку української влади. Це означає, що можна знайти компроміс, але давайте всі разом спробуємо, всі учасники, в тому числі ті, хто до нас підключений віддалено, знайти відповідь на запитання, яке свого часу ставив, до речі, президент Зеленський. Чому Україна не в НАТО? От я попрошу зараз взяти слово Еміне Джапарову. Ви зараз спілкуєтеся із нашими західними партнерами, із союзниками. Що вони кажуть? Яку вони бачать причину того, що Україна дійсно поки що не є в НАТО?
Дякую, Сергію. Колеги,
Thank you, Sergei. Colleagues, I would like to greet you again. This is my second time today. This is my second panel. I'll try to be brief.
чому Україна не в НАТО?
Answering the question why Ukraine is not in NATO, by all means, there are two sides of the coin, the internal process and the will of the Ukrainian state and the society. Till recently, it hadn't been consolidated. Now we have more than 50% of the people supporting this as a priority, our membership in NATO. The latest result provided by the Razumkov Center, 53%. The Yanukovych, the underlying status, Kharkiv agreements, and the Ukrainian society also was wavering and undecided. And that is very much followed by our partners. Now we have the argument that there is the political ambition, there's the support of the society for this ambition, and this is the synergy, of course. And a second track is our internal reform, and it is not of less importance. It seems to me that the NATO topic, the map, membership in NATO, this is the topic that has most speculations, manipulations, interpretations, and actually concerns, treason even sometimes. Now we have the Enhanced Opportunities Partnership. Let me somehow familiar with in Ukrainian.
Так, партнерство розширених
The enhanced opportunities partnership, and Tuli will discuss it in more detail, I'm sure. Is it military to military? And this is a token of success that we developing this everyday cooperation. Igor was right saying or suggesting that Ukraine is not a beneficiary of NATO support, NATO assistance, different forms of, let me say, consultations and advice to synchronize our efforts, but also contribute the K4, Afghanistan, Afghani operation in Iraq very soon, I'm sure. The Sea Guardian. This is the process developing of capacity building and trust. This is the societal dimension, the internal reform, and our armed forces are not the armed forces we used to have before 2014 or had in 2014. So, and the Russian fact of notable less importance, I would say we have to bear it in mind all the time. Russia is blackmailing many countries, not just Ukraine, the red lines, but the final summit, the final document, the summit on the 14th of June, that's the will of alliance. Nobody can influence the policy of alliance and enlargement. Of course, we'll come back to that, but now I would like to raise the issue of the reform of our armed forces. From the point of view of NATO, this is of great importance. So, Anatoly Petrenko, Deputy Minister of Defense, do you really feel that the NATO received the signal that the armed forces are ready? Sometimes we hear from the allies that Ukraine is not fully implementing the opportunities provided by the partners.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm happy to participate in this discussion. Answering your question immediately, I would like to tell you Ukraine will be the member of the NATO in the strategic perspective, and we will do that via the complicated reforms of the armed forces of Ukraine according to the NATO standards. Also, our economy is to get integrated into European market. Also, our technical potential, defense potential, our agricultural potential will help that. And our political system will get strengthened, and it will guarantee the protection of the rights and freedoms of every citizen. And that is important. Answering your question about membership, why? I will tell you, membership is a political decision, and we need to do everything so that the military criteria of the NATO membership are clear, understandable, and this will allow to make the political decision that most of the Ukrainians are looking forward to. To organize these processes, I would mention 5 main issues. The main one is work on the development of human capital. It should have a new quality. We need to have new civil servants, new military officers who have new knowledge according to NATO standard, and also they have to combine it with the experience that Ukraine gained in the result of 7 years of warfare with Russian Federation. Also, these new experts are to be able to operate within the new system of administration, where we are ready to apply digital technologies, innovations in the sphere of defense and security, and that is what our system of educational institutions is working on. Our system of personnel development is working on that. We need to appoint the best ones to the high positions. And also, as NATO are our main allies, especially the US, Canada, and the Great Britain will help us to achieve these indicators. Also, we're using the military exercises in Ukraine and abroad, and talking about the scenario of military exercise, we need to understand that we are getting concentrated not just on peacekeeping activities, but we are working on the actions of collective defense. Now there is a sea breeze taking place. 32 international partners came to us, and that is about protection of national interests in the south of Ukraine. And in autumn, we will have a big exercise, joint efforts, and many NATO allies will participate in it, and we will show our people how we defend the Ukrainian people together with our foreign partners. We are using NATO methodologies. NATO experts come to us, and they help us to get ready to participate in the operations under the leadership of the NATO. And these are operations reacting to any type of crisis. Education and training are the main things. Also, our next benchmark is the common military base. Our strategy should be the strategy of NATO. And the main one is the principle of comprehensive defense, which combine civilian and military capacities. The leadership based on democratic civilian control, that's a key thing for membership, and that's the mechanism which will allow to form and develop the strategic decisions by all the branches of authorities, and this will help society understand what is our national security today and what will it be in the future. Anatoly, please wrap up because we don't have time left. I apologize if there is something very important, or in the end we'll give you the floor again. I am sorry. I have to interrupt, but the moderator has to do that. I would like to invite our guests who are online. First, the representative of our mission at NATO, then the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Georgia. And the question is, the role of Russia. Isn't that the answer to the question why we are not in the NATO? We hear from the NATO that third countries cannot influence. What do you hear? Isn't the role of Russia very decisive in that?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I am glad to greet participants of this forum from Brussels. I would like to draw attention to 2 points. Many people have analyzed point 68 and 69 of the communique discussing Georgia and Ukraine. This is the identical language. That means that we turn the page of history together. After the unaligned states, the aggression, we've come back to 2006, 2008. You were referring to the Russian factor. There was one specific, very specific answer provided by Joe Biden at his press conference. Historically, in Washington, in the US, they remember 1955 when Germany, part of the divided Germany, became member of NATO. And we are using all all the opportunities for the status of partner with enhanced opportunities partner. This is interaction in some sensitive spheres. It's as a person looking on this from inside, I can assure you that we have the contact in security services, and there's the state secrets. In alliance, they use electronic networks for communication and data exchange with limited access. We have no such opportunity yet. All the member countries of NATO have at some point gone the introduction of such protected communication with the headquarters, with the Russian factor. In 2 days, we are having the Ukraine NATO commissions with Vice Prime Minister Alexei Reznikov attending, and he, as the member of Trilateral Contact Group, TCG, and Vice Prime Minister, will be reporting and providing information for the member country representatives on the situation in the parts of Ukraine temporarily not under the governmental control. But the short answer of Biden's is no. Thank you. Thank you for being so brief, but we'll come back to you at the end of this panel.
I'd like to invite our Deputy Head of Minister of Foreign Affairs of Georgia, Lasha Darsalia, with his ideas with his vision regarding role of Russia. Probably you, as a politician, can say more, because I think that Russia really tries to stop Ukrainian integration to NATO, whether it succeeds or no. And also I would like to ask you to reflect the idea that was expressed by Igor Zhovkva from presidential administration, from Office of President of Ukraine, that probably MAP could be not the necessary element of our way towards membership. Do you think it is feasible to avoid MAP, or you see it as a necessary step that can never be avoided? So please.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. First of all, let me use this opportunity and welcome colleagues from Ukrainian government, as well as the other panelists and distinguished audience, for inviting me on this forum. I really, we really appreciate it very much to have this opportunity to speak today. It is a pleasure for me to take part in this forum and share with you views on Georgia-Ukraine partnership on the common path to NATO. At 2008 at Bucharest summit, our countries received a pledge from the NATO member states that they would one day become members of the alliance. This pledge is guiding the Euro-Atlantic integration process of Georgia and Ukraine. But at the foundation of this process are the aspirations of Georgians and Ukrainians to safeguard freedom and sovereignty, ensure peace and prosperity for our nations, and be a part of a Euro-Atlantic community with shared values and norms. Except for our friends, Baltic states, Georgia and Ukraine are the only countries on the former Soviet Union with explicit and firm Euro-Atlantic aspirations. Georgia and Ukraine, notwithstanding all difficulties, internal and external, have demonstrated their commitment to this path, as well as to the transformation of their societies. Important reforms have been undertaken towards strengthening of democratic institutions, fight against corruption, reforms of the defense and security sector, civilian oversight, and others. These reforms have enabled our countries to become security providers through the contribution to NATO operations. My country has had more of a quarter century of experience of participation in NATO operations and has been the highest per capita contributor to the Resolute Support Mission, which has just been completed. As a special recognition of Georgia and Ukraine's reliability and interoperability within NATO, our countries have been included in the Enhanced Opportunities Partners Group. But participation in the so-called out-of-area operation is only one dimension of our contribution. Our home Black Sea is at the focus of our joint efforts with NATO to make our region and the Euro-Atlantic space safer. Black Sea has gradually captured the attention of our international partners from beginning reasons such as accession to EU and NATO Black Sea littoral countries and increasing importance of the Black Sea region as a trade and energy hub, but for malicious reasons as well as occupation and annexation of Georgia's and Ukraine's territories by Russia, ongoing hostilities in the East Ukraine, and the extensive military buildup in the annexed and occupied regions. Cooperation between NATO on the one hand and Georgia and Ukraine on the other is crucial for the security of the Black Sea. NATO has adopted a number of important decisions aimed at bolstering cooperation with our countries. NATO-Georgia cooperation on strengthening the Black Sea security has already materialized in concrete and tangible deliverables, such as more port calls of NATO vessels, joint trainings, regular exchange of information, more exercises, joint work to counter hybrid warfare, and sharing more air traffic data. We believe that carrying out joint Ukraine, Georgia, and NATO live exercises in the Black Sea will be another important step in order to address the existing security challenges. We also believe that taking into consideration additional military deployments of Russian Federation in the region following the inaugural Karabakh War, NATO's further engagement and increased presence in the Black Sea region acquires even more importance as the only stabilizing factor in the region. In spite of Russia's ongoing hostile and damaging acts against us, we continue to strive towards European and Euro-Atlantic future, which first and foremost means safeguarding and strengthening democratic institutions, values, and achievements. And of course, we are more than partners. We have important integration tools helping us to prepare for the membership in the alliance, a mix of similar political and practical enablers of our integration process. In Georgia's case, these are NATO-Georgia Commission Annual National Program and Substantial NATO-Georgia Package. Ukraine has a NATO-Ukraine Commission Annual National Program and Comprehensive Assistance Package. These tools are more than any other aspirant have had at their disposal so far. This is particularly, I'm addressing your question about if the membership action plan is important on the path of integration or not. But we do need a political decision of the allies to move forward on the political track of the membership. In addition to work with the allies, but we also need to work with each other on multiple aspects related to NATO integration and security, such as on Black Sea security, on hybrid threats, on sharing experience in reforms. And we need to strive to do better individually, as our individual success and achievements strengthen our joint bid for the membership in the alliance and help us move closer to this goal. It is true that in the accession process, each country is assessed according to its own merits. As this makes a stronger case that membership of Georgia and Ukraine in NATO will not only ensure the security and democratic development of our countries, but will have a strong stabilization effect on the larger European and Euro-Atlantic security. Thank you very much.
Дуже дякую, Лаша. Я не впевнений, чи мої
Thank you, Lasha. It's better for me to speak Ukrainian. They're telling me. Do you have a realistic opportunity for Ukraine and Georgia become members of NATO without map? Or is it an absolutely necessary and compulsory state for both of our countries?
Yes, well, first of all, let me say that it's very important on our parts of membership that Georgia and NATO are not only consumers but also contributors to the international security. I think Georgia and Ukraine. So I think this is a very important issue for our path to the membership. And second, as I mentioned in my presentation, it's important the readiness of allies for this, and this is in which direction we have to work. Membership action plan as such is the instrument, not the goal. This is important to highlight. And whenever there is readiness of alliance and Georgia and Ukraine are ready today, to join this alliance. I think the instruments, whatever will be applicable to that particular moment, will be used. So my answer is yes and no at the same time. It really depends on the particular situation. I mean, the important is that we to be ready for this window of opportunity when it will open, and to work with our allies in this direction. And whenever there will be the full readiness, the appropriate instruments will apply.
Дякую дуже. Ми ще повернемося до всіх, хто включається до нас віддалено.
Thank you. We will also come back to you with the final questions. I would like to turn the floor to the parliamentary component, Marina Bardina, Deputy Head of the Parliamentary Committee for Foreign Affairs. In any case, if we discuss the conduct of reforms, the implementation of reforms, the majority of those reforms go through the Parliament, if not all of them. So are there any signs of appetite in the Parliament readiness for reforms when it comes to NATO? Can we say that the brand of NATO or the necessity to join NATO is a launching pad? Yes, the brand of NATO is a very good metaphor. Yes, we have stamped NATO a whole series of initiatives. Another draft last week under the same rubric, and this is a very weighty argument for my colleagues in the Parliament. I have no doubts that Ukraine will become a member. It's a matter of time, it's a matter of diplomatic work and the international political support. And also, without any doubt, the lawmaking developments. My colleague was absolutely right mentioning the necessity to employ the human capital. The security and defense capacity is based on the infrastructure, military equipment, but it's all about human capital. It's about people, about their leadership, personal leadership, their patriotic attitude, readiness to defend their state, their openness for modernization, for new experience, for new challenges. And the Parliament, because of that, have already adopted a whole set of drafts, made them into laws, the intelligence, defense initiatives, reform of the security service of Ukraine in the first reading. Last week, we also tabled a draft. I accept it as a draft having to do with human capital, because for the historic point of time, the Bucharest summit decision recognizing the prospect for Ukraine and Georgia to join NATO and receive a map. At that point, we had 2,000 women serving in the military. And we have to say that when it was reconfirmed for Ukraine to support, we have 32,000 women in the armed forces. The conditions in the army should be created based on the example of NATO member countries. And the Committee of International Policy, also we have this very close communication in order to, first of all, understand for our own purposes the rules of service in NATO member countries. Last week, they registered with the support of head of the Servant of the People Party, head of our faction, the draft on equity in the armed forces. There are certain limitations for position women in the leadership, the daily duties, limitations for leaves, maternity and paternity leaves. This is all about human capital. This is about motivation incentives to join the armed forces of Ukraine and to upgrade and develop with the state. Last week we had another case of repercussions. That was for the cadets of the military institute of the Taras Shevchenko University. There was public criticism coming from me. I'll explain my position now. If we approach NATO, we have to do that in comfortable boots, in comfortable footwear. We have to see how they operate. Of course, we have to talk to cadets. It is an important development important and a priority. It's also important to provide the educational opportunity for our posterity, for the future defenders of Ukraine, to have rotation programs and change programs for the boys and girls to see with their own eyes how their colleagues are trained abroad in NATO member countries. This is a big chunk of work. This is a big infrastructure. And we have to upgrade ourselves to develop and to express this leadership and to teach our future generations, because Ukraine and NATO will require understanding, full appreciation by these people, the phenomenon of the armed forces in Ukraine when we are in NATO. Speaking of the position voiced by the President of the Russian Federation, he's trying to support it in the international arena, but it failed. It became clear after this last summit, despite all the public statements coming from the Russian Federation, they reconfirmed the communique that Ukraine had to receive a map, and we have to continue the diplomatic work to assist in bilateral relations with the NATO countries, which held in out the helping hand for Ukraine, and for the map and the membership itself. Thank you very much, Marina.
Зараз ми підійшли до думок наших закордонних.
Thank you. Now I would like to mention that both countries, the representatives of which are present in this panel, are friends of Ukraine, the countries that support the perspectives for membership of our country in the alliance. First of all, I would like to request the ambassador of Estonian Republic, Kaimo Kuusk, to say what is the road for Ukraine. Do you believe that we should believe that MAP is something mandatory? Because we see how it's mentioned in the declaration of the summit. So shouldn't we get concentrated on that? Maybe you have some other ideas, creative ideas, and maybe this idea about developing a new plan that will stimulate necessary reforms in Ukraine will be supported by you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Well, it's as the name of the panel is saying, it's the path to NATO. That means it takes time. It took time also from us. We got our independence back when we decided that we want to belong to West. And well, we started to reform. We started to build some institutions from zero. So and then it took us more than 10 years, and we called it rodeo. So you call it turbo regime. So we had also quite a difficult and crazy period there to run through, and trying to do everything done in a one time. I think what is really right approach from your side is this step by step into NATO. This has been phrased from different politicians, from Zelensky, from Kuleba, in your case. And that means closer to NATO institutions, and not only close, but also into. Be it officers in our defense academies, like in Tartu, in Baltic Defense College, be it your representatives in Brussels, and also really good option is to become a member of NATO Centers of Excellence. For example, this year, Ukraine is becoming member of the Energy Security Center of Excellence in Lithuania. And we in Estonia, we started the process of taking Ukraine into NATO Cyber Defense Center of Excellence. So I'm looking, George, to our Lithuanian colleagues. You have as well Center of Excellence of NATO Strategic Communications. That's the next step. So if you are already in those different institutions and not only getting information, you are adding value there. We need to actually call you to those NATO centers of excellences. I think that's the way you are getting into the NATO rather sooner than later.
Thank you, Kaimo. As it has been mentioned already, we have the representative of Latvian Republic, Karina Leja, the deputy head of the mission of Latvian Republic. And the same question goes to you. How should Ukraine go towards NATO? Let's not get concentrated on MAP, on techniques. What is the most important? What could impress allies so that they are sure that Ukraine moves towards allies?
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to speak at this important event today and this important year for Ukraine. About joining the NATO and the way, I think each membership is a unique story for each unique country, so you cannot talk about general specifics for every country, and you cannot use other historical examples for your unique way. And of course, there's no secret that Latvia would support, as a supporter of the open door policy, would support the decision to grant the MAP to Ukraine today if there would be a unanimous decision of the alliance. But of course, taking account that it is a consensus decision, there is no ally who should be asked why Ukraine is not there or when it's going to be there. There is a consensus. But as our foreign minister talked in the interview in April in your media, by the way, I'm not remember whether you took the interview, he said that the map shouldn't be seen as the only and absolute divine instrument and mechanism to solve the issues, of course. And NATO 2030 initiatives now talks about new tailored approaches. The question you are asking, it is also discussed within the NATO as well now, about new approaches of the partnership, and NATO 2030 is also about strengthening our global partnership as well. So what will come out from these discussions, it really depends not only from the NATO member states, but of course, as Excellency Kaimo already told, from your side, from your initiatives. There are instruments already of support from the NATO member states and from Baltic states and all the other partners. The offer and possibilities are given. The question is how much and how hard and how soon these opportunities are taken. I think global challenges are a common task for us, for everybody, as a NATO member states and Ukraine as well. And Ukraine previously has shown itself as an absolutely reliable partner. And I think enhanced opportunity partnership is self-evident credit for Ukraine for it. So I think, first of all, it's necessary to make action to use these possibilities which are given at the post and at the question at the moment. And of course, I cannot suggest or invent any new ideas at this moment to give suggestions, but of course, when, as everybody talked already, that the implementation of reforms is a fundamental condition. And we've tried to talk about measurement or the amount of the reforms, how much they are implemented or how much they are reached already, or the legislation acts, how many taken. But of course, this is not about the quantity, and it's also not about the quality. I mean, NATO membership is not only about reforms. It's more about the idea of democracy, about rule of law, about fundamental freedoms as well. So it's a quite wide question. It's not only about the modernization of the army, it's about the modernization of the whole understanding of idea and living in the country at all. So I can, by promising all the political and practical support our country can give to you in this way, I just wish you luck and strength in this process.
Дякую дуже. Я дуже коротко перед тим, як перейти до
Thank you. Very briefly, before we move to a final exchange of opinions, I would like to ask Ambassador Kursk, once we're talking about reforms, as the ambassador, do you see any opportunity on behalf of NATO to suggest to Ukraine some new format which will push Ukraine on the way of reforms, or is it not possible?
Я вас не чую.
Thank you very much for your question. I think NATO should, ourselves, we should be more concrete on those reform talks. And I think instead of map, we can easily put together a to-do list for you. So you can go and do those things needed to be done. Otherwise, we are just talking that hey, reform yourself. I think there are very concrete things, and we are supporting you also on those very concrete reforms, be it reform of and law of counterintelligence service and some other very concrete things.
Дякую. Отже,
But I think
Thank you. I understand. In closing, I have a very difficult question, but I hope that we will all try to look for a very sincere answer to this complicated question. Let's start with the politician, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Georgia, Laszlo Saleh. When Ukraine and Georgia can be in NATO, in your opinion, Masha, can we convince, and when we can convince the allies to accept us?
Well, I really hope and pretty much sure that it will be sooner than later, but it's really difficult to say the concrete year. But the most important is not when allies will be ready, but it's important that Ukraine and Georgia are ready for the membership, and this is something we have to persuade all our allies. And I think whenever we will succeed on this, that's when the real membership of our countries will become the real. And I think this is the important thing, that Ukraine and Georgia continue being the strong supporters of international security, continue being strong partners for NATO countries, and we have to work on this path that there are no NATO skeptics left inside of no skeptics of Ukraine and Georgia membership left inside of the NATO countries. And these are the tasks, and it depends on partners, but partially on us as well.
Дякую. Давайте всі пройдемо.
Thank you. Let's, in the same order, let's try to formulate our dream. When we, do you think, can become members of NATO? Any man? I was a journalist myself, and I understand you three. That's how journalists would like to put this question. When? But I'm not a prophet. I'm not a fortune teller, and I cannot put it this way. We should ask ourselves how we should act, what we should do for Ukraine to become a member. And there I'd like to say that we are on this track already, on this road. And Kaima said that that was a road year. We had the turbo mode regime. We reflected this in the constitution, the defense plan that is being developed for the first time. Strategy for national security and all the national documents of the same order. I would like to say one thing. It's a positive thing that there's the core group of countries. November last year, 13 countries that approach Jens Stoltenberg, Secretary General of NATO, on behalf of their countries for the open door policy for both Georgia and Ukraine. And another category of countries which are prepared to consolidate if there is a consensus, and the skeptics. I think we have to work more actively with the latter category, with the skeptics. And we have to convince them that we are part of the solution, not part of the problem. And I would like to address Anatoly Petrenko. Can we answer the when question for the NATO standard, the STANAGs in the same scope that will provide for some evidence of us being interoperable with NATO member countries? When can we state that? I think as a society we should not be obsessed with the deadlines or the figures. I would like to speak as a follow-up to M&A. When we are ready, when we comply with certain requirements. Membership in NATO is not a title, and however honorable. This is not just a safeguard collective security. This is a strategic decision for Ukraine to defend its national interests. It's balance of interests for all the allies. This is collective security, not just for Ukraine, but for the 30 effective members of NATO, united by the collective security treaty. I personally would put it this way. We are potentially a member, according to all the indicators from the military point of view, at least. We are not a special partner anymore. We are a very good, potential, powerful ally, which will come to NATO with the capabilities providing for Euro-Atlantic security of all the member countries, all the community of allies. So under the military criteria, we have to become 1% better than effective members, and that will be the best argument for the political elites to take the decision in our favor. And for Ukrainian soldiers, I would like to thank them, every one of them, for what they are doing in the battlefield, protecting Ukraine, defending Ukraine. They know how to do their work, do their job. We have to develop our institutions, big democratic transformations, and I'm sure that the political decision will be in favor of Ukraine. Marina, you're my last hope. Politicians can say anything. They're entitled to that. We have Zygmunt Paulionis recently on our show. He said that that would happen before he retired. I'm too responsible to provide you with the actual dates. This is not a date. This is mark, rather. We have to do everything possible in the Parliament for Ukraine to become a country NATO cannot do without. It is all essential. It's about the Parliament doing everything for the reform of the defense complex, the reform of our security service. In the second reading, I would like to see this transparent, correct, and effective law. So when is not that as important as what we will come to that state with. And President Zelensky will be able to implement his key priority for peace in Ukraine, Donbass, integration to NATO. Marina, so we have to do the diplomatic work. Thank you very much, Brussels. Mr. Dolkachev, you cannot say when exactly. For a diplomat, it's unacceptable, but can you see that there is this understanding in the headquarters that Ukraine should be in NATO? that this is not just words. For the alliance, it is important. In 1995, the importance was at the summit in 1999. The map was approved. For the procedure, these documents have not been cancelled, and the charter provides, Judge of 1995, that that will help Ukraine become a member. And the latest statement of the Ministers of Foreign Affairs for the open door policy was adopted in 2015 in December. The initiative of the whole set of countries to prove that the open door policy was a success helped a whole set of countries of Eastern and Central Europe to reform, to transform, and this initiative is here to stay. It's still open, still effective. I'm not sure when they will revisit this position, but there's this understanding by all means in the alliance that in the nearest time the Ministers of Foreign Affairs have to look into the open door policies from Ukraine and Georgia first on the waiting list. And Ambassador Kusk, do you believe that other members of the alliance will also see Ukraine in NATO in the future?
Of course. And 2 years ago, I told Minister Kuleba that it can take 10 years for you to become a NATO member. So now it's 8.
Отже, ми маємо першу людину, яка назвала цифру.
He's the first person to provide us with the exact timeline.
Give a number also.
Дякую. Каріна Лея, для завершення.
Karina, do you think that we will be able to do it within 8 years?
I am not allowed to doubt my colleagues' guessings or the number already told, and I really hope that indeed this number would be the maximum for your country to see you there.
На цій чудовій ноті, я думаю, що ми можемо з чесною
On this beautiful note, we can conclude this discussion with a clear consciousness. And nobody on this panel questioned the opportunity and necessity for Ukraine to go on the 7-year approach to become a full member of NATO. Thank you for following us.
Це був перший день всеукраїнського форуму.
That has been the first day on Ukraine 30 International Affairs. Tomorrow we will continue this discussion, the Crimean platform, the neighborhood policy, and the international Ukrainian ship. Ukraine is where Ukrainians are. That's how the diaspora people treat it. See you tomorrow.